All right, welcome, my friends, to another episode of Extreme Health Radio. Thank you guys so much for your patience with us. We're a little bit late. It's funny because we're always a little bit late. Like, we can never seem to start on time because of the technology, but I appreciate you guys being here. This is going to be, I think, one of the most important radio shows that you might ever hear. We're going to talk about lipofuscin and Matt Blackburn's sort of protocol for calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. And I kind of titled the podcast today, Lipofuscin, What Can We Do About It? Or the disease that kills all of us. But there are definitely some things that we can do to prevent lipofuscin, and AKA yellow fat disease and lipid peroxidation. And these are all caused by things that you probably were told at one point in your life were really healthy, right? Omega-3 fish oil, DHA, all these supplements that the sort of the mainstream alternative are promoting. And so my friend Matt is going to be on the show today, and he's one of the few people I feel that really speaks truth when it comes to all of this stuff, because he had like $1 million business selling DHA, omega-3 algae-based oil. And after doing further research, he walked away from all of that. So that shows so much integrity, and I just think that's so important, because a lot of people are telling you about purchasing and buying and taking fish oils. I hear it all the time in podcasts, and if they really learned what it does to you, you would hope that they would have your best interest in mind. So my friend Matt, he's been on the show twice before. I listen to every one of his podcasts. He's such an awesome guy. I share his podcast all the time. I think he's one of the few people, like I said, out there doing great things in the world and with true integrity, with true heart and passion. And let me bring him up on the show today. Let's see here. So guys, real quick, if there's a break in audio, this is our brand new studio, and the internet speed is a lot less than it was before. So my hope is that everything works right. So, but let me bring Matt on. Matt, thanks so much for being on, my friend.
Thanks for having me back, Justin. It's funny, you're my favorite podcast too. And if you didn't keep poking me to start my show, Mitolife Radio, I probably never would have. I think you sent me probably 8 or 10 messages over the course of months. And it's one of those things where, just like starting a YouTube channel, you just have to jump in and do it. And so thank you for inspiring me to do this.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things where I would watch your Instagram stories, and it's one of those things where I don't watch anyone's Instagram stories really at all. But I watch yours all the time because I think you're giving such important information. I remember thinking like, if I'm going to go do my workout or something outside, or if I'm going to go do something, drive around, I want to listen to more of what you have to say. But at that time, you were just doing stories. So now you have, I think, like 80 shows or something like that.
Yeah, just reached 80 shows and over 200,000 unique downloads. So it's growing. And I'm
Wow.
very grateful to be able to share alternative information, as you mentioned before the show. There's like regular alternative health, and then there's alternative, where more information's being shared that is really counter to to a lot of businesses and to a lot of popular opinions.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about like your story, because I know your story, but there might be a lot of people not knowing who you are. But like I said at the beginning, like you had a over $1 million business selling DHA. See, this is the one thing that's like really challenging for people, because when your income is tied to a belief system, or in some way like selling a product like this, like what do you do if you realize the product you're selling is killing people? So you had a product that you fully believed in, but then you found out information that was kind of contrary to that, right? So what did you do? I'm just so curious.
Yeah. When I was living in Big Bear, Southern California, in the mountains. I was megadosing my own product and often taking 30 grams at a time. I would just do a shot of the entire 2-ounce bottle of algae oil. And so I was living it. I was doing the sun gazing, the ice baths, and the naked sunbathing, the whole deal. And I believe that I was definitely heading down the wrong path, probably the opposite path that I'm on today,
Hmm.
in many ways. And um, yeah, it was one of those things where I just started researching it. and realizing, wow, this product that I'm selling is not in integrity. It's not what I thought it was. Even though I fully believed in it, research was showing me the contrary, that it was tied to lipid peroxidation and this thing called yellow fat disease and lipofuscin. And I really have to credit Adam Bergstrom mainly for that, because he was the one that kept coming up on my radar every year, because he's been talking about it for years, and
Hmm.
omega 3s are not ideal. And so he really inspired me to start looking into it. And once I did, it was uh, kind of like waking up in a straitjacket. I was like, wow, I'm all tied up here, and
Yeah.
somehow I got to get out. And that took about 6 months to get out in a legal sense and just in a business sense.
Hmm.
And then the next year, which was pretty much all of 2019, I used to recover myself and to help other people recover from taking omega 3s. And of course, it's a long process, but just changing the mindset about it is the biggest thing. Like that, there's no such thing as EFAs. They're not essential fatty acids. They're only essential for cancer development and lipofuscin formation.
Mm. No, but Matt, I just heard yesterday it's really good for the heart, like omega 3s. I won't tell you the podcast I was listening to or I shared with you before the show, but omega 3s are great for the heart, right? What's up? What's up with that?
Yeah, yeah, and it's a whole kind of mentality like that's kind of not a bioenergetic approach. It's not looking at energy production in the cell from a whole systems perspective. It's really that mindset of like intermittent fasting and fat burning and running off fatty acids. And it kind of goes along with that train of thought where I've moved towards a more balanced approach, which is not restricting macronutrients. So you're getting your sugars, your carbs, your proteins, and your fats, but you're really making sure you restrict uh, unsaturated fatty acids, unsaturated fats. And I go a step further to say even limit cold water seafood, which no one dares to go to
Mm-mm.
that realm because, what do you mean, Matt? It's a whole food. It's ancestral. It's, uh, you know, pescatarian. It's
Yeah.
Mediterranean diet. What do you? It's good for you, but you see people on heavy seafood diets, especially in the biohacking community, and we're all experiments, right? And you can look at each other. We can look at each other in this community and see and gauge how people are doing by how they look, the kind of the mood that they exude, and all these things. But just skin and seeing these spots on the skin.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I go on airplanes, I'm like, it's always just fun to like look for lipofuscin heads on the plane, and um, it's usually it's a balding man with a receding hairline, and it's funny you see this with a lot of doctors too, and really receding hairline, and then you see all these brown spots, head on the top of the head,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of fun to have a game like spot the lipofuscin.
Yeah. That should be a new game, like a road trip, like that's hilarious. So it's I think you posted a video recently, or I think it was a screenshot in one of your stories of a prominent biohacker who will remain nameless. But he looked super, super old to me, and he's consuming a diet super heavy. I think most of you guys probably know who I'm talking about. And, you know, it's difficult to say, but it sounds to me like he's eating seafood for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? And so, like you said, you can see it in most people. And these lipids aren't just in like heavy seafood, but they're in this rancid oils, right? So, like, aren't they in a lot of processed foods too?
Yeah, that's that's a big dose that people get. Just condiments. Uh, you'll see canola oil snuck in there, um, safflower oil, sunflower oil, even healthy gummy bears, like the healthiest gummy bears, which to me I think are amazing if you make them at home.
Mm-hmm.
But if you buy just even the healthiest gummy bear at the food store, sunflower oil are in them. I haven't seen one without a PUFA in it, and that's really unfortunate because gelatin can can probably help with lipofuscin and the sugar aspect. Um, but yeah,
That's crazy, huh?
it's in a lot of different things.
Yeah, so let's sort of like get people kind of dialed into this idea of lipofuscin. So, lipofuscin, tell people like what it is, like what it contains. It's not just fish oil; it's all kinds of other oils. So maybe just talk about that, and also like what's wrong with these omega threes, and why is lipofuscin so bad? So we'll start there and kind of progress.
Yeah, definitely. So, I actually made some notes for the call because I want
Nice.
to break this down in a really just coherent way and organized way where people can look into it for themselves. So, definitely don't recommend taking our word for it. You can research this and find out. You can't talk about lipofuscin without talking about the mitochondria and lysosomes. And I'll break this down as easy as I can because this gets into biochemistry, and people might have flashbacks from college or whatever. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and that's probably the easiest part to understand. But
Right.
it goes a little deeper than that.
Totally.
And so cells have repair mechanisms, repair systems, you can call them, and the two major ones are the lysosomes and the proteasomes, and their job is to break down undigested or unneeded proteins, fats, and then even mitochondria. So it's been talked about in the cold thermogenesis community. When you take a cold shower and you can't stand it and you're like shivering, that's your weak mitochondria dying off. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's a good way to do it, but that does force that process. Um, and these systems are a part of that, of getting rid of those mitochondria. And so, um, very very easily you can understand lipofuscin as just junk or garbage taking up space, and it's accumulated material in the cell that takes up 40-50% of the cell, and that actually impairs these repair systems from functioning, especially the lysosomes. And the reason why this is so important is because you'll hear the word autophagy thrown about a lot in the health community. But again, you can't talk about autophagy without talking about the lysosomes, because the lysosomes' responsibility is to perform autophagy. And autophagy is kind of like the garbage recycling of the
Okay.
cell. And so this is really the crux of the matter with lipofuscin, where it really does its damage, is because it accumulates and accumulates in the cell with
Mm-hmm.
biological age, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
sign of biological aging. And the more lipofuscin you have in your various cells throughout your entire body, the less that cell, whether it's a cardiac cell in the heart, a neuron in your brain, a cell in your liver, those are the three areas it accumulates in a lot, or the eye, the retina especially, then it actually loses its ability to take out the trash. So it's kind
Okay.
of this like catch where you just keep the trash keeps coming in and filling up the recycling center, and then eventually just clogs the recycling center. And so it becomes impossible to get that out. And in fact, the only way you can get out lipofuscin is by mitosis, cell division. But non-dividing cells, supposedly like the heart and the brain, they say the cells can't divide.
Uh-huh.
That's where lipofuscin is especially dangerous, because when you have one cell splitting into two, then you have 50-50 lipofuscin, and then some gets released out into the blood and just gets, you know, can be taken away. But uh, non-dividing cells, I mean, it just stays there forever, and it's kind of like a
Wow.
melted plastic material. They call it a yellow brown pigment or a
Uh-huh.
granule or age pigment, and it's mostly
So
consisting of fat. Yeah.
So, Matt, is this the type of thing where the substance in and of itself, like, is it bad in and of itself, or is it just like filling a room, like the room I'm in here, with a bunch of junk, and then you can't turn the light switch on, or you can't turn the air conditioner fan on? Is that kind of the idea? It's just junk that literally fills the inside of the cell?
Um, it's actually worse than that. So it's reactive junk. As my friend Adam Bergstrom says, it doesn't just sit there; it attacks. So,
Okay, that's
um,
funny. That's great.
and so so lipofuscin actually causes excessive reactive oxygen species to be created. Those
Okay.
are often abbreviated ROS.
Hmm.
And it's actually a downstream of effects where um, there's actually a relationship with iron. And I know you've had Morley Robbins on the show, as I
Hmm.
have, kind of the world's expert on iron overload or iron toxicity.
Hmm.
And it turns out that excess iron actually reacts with lipofuscin, um, and it'll actually turn hydrogen peroxide, which is good. Our body uses H2O2 to kill off pathogens and for processes, um, neutralize free radicals. It'll actually convert hydroxyl radical.
Okay.
So that becomes even more dangerous, which perpetuates lipofuscin accumulation. So a lot of how lipofuscin works is it gets there and then it keeps perpetuating its creation through shutting down various processes. Um, but it will
S-
absolutely reroute cellular processes in itself.
That's interesting. So, going back to what you said before, which I was telling you before, like I listen to your podcast, I listen to every one of your shows. And guys, by the way, listen to Matt's shows, dude. I'm telling you, his show is awesome, awesome, awesome. So make sure to like go on there, go to iTunes, search for Mitolife Radio, and every time on Friday when he releases a new show, which there's gonna be a new show today, so I'll ask you about what that is. But going back to like the lysosome, because I was telling you, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and the podcast I was listening to yesterday was talking about how omega-3s are great and blah, blah, blah. There's 2,000 studies and all this stuff. And they were talking about autophagy and mitophagy and all these things. And I kept hearing your voice in the back of my head about the lysosomes and why the lysosome, if that's not working, autophagy can't work. But explain to me a little bit about like, why is the lysosome important for autophagy to work, or can it work even um, if there is omega-3, or what's the deal with the lysosome and how that causes autophagy to work?
It's called hydrolysis, and um, there's a term macro autophagy. Um, and it's absolutely, you can't perform autophagy without the lysosome, and so it's connected. Just like all the parts of the cell work together, um, it doesn't work without this recycling center, because it will actually send junk. The autophagosomes will engulf junk and then send it to the lysosome. um, that cannot work if if the lysosomes shut down,
Hmm.
which is the case in most people, and that's the start of heart disease or neurodegeneration or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease (NAFLD), which is caused by PUFA. Um,
So why does the
uh,
lysosome, does it get shut down from PUFA and then it becomes like this sort of snowball self-perpetuating thing, right?
yeah, I mean, most likely the lysosomes just have extremely reduced capacity and the rate of digesting um, unwanted proteins and lipids.
Okay.
Um, And what's interesting, notice I didn't say sugar. People are like,
Yeah, yeah.
sugar causes all these problems. It's like, well, sugar doesn't get stuck in the lysosomes like protein and lipids do. But sugar or carbs can actually help recover via glycogen from PUFA. But yeah, the lysosomes, when they're lipofuscin filled, they'll even spill enzymes, because the lysosomes, basically a sac. The lysosome is a sac of enzymes, and those enzymes are what digest the junk. But
Okay.
when it's full with, say 50% lipofuscin, the enzymes are way less, and they become crowded out by this lipofuscin.
Hmm.
Um, and so that'll actually cause the lysosome to spill uh, and lipofuscin, which cell death called apoptosis.
Hey, Matt, go back
So
and say what you just said right there because you cut out a little bit. So you said that will actually go back and so that last couple sentences you cut out a bit.
Oh yeah. So the lysosome, when it gets full of lipofuscin, will actually spit out or spill out enzymes
Uh-huh.
that digest the junk into the cytoplasm of the cell, and lipofuscin into the cytoplasm, which is very, very toxic if it gets out of the
Oh, okay.
lysosome. And that triggers cell death or apoptosis, programmed cell death.
Ah,
So
interesting. Okay, so
mhm,
our cells are supposed to live for like 120 days, is that right? And it's a lot less than that, right? For most people.
that's what, yeah, yeah, that's what I've heard about 120 days. And Yeah, it's a lot less with that, and it actually triggers cancer growth, uh, metastasis of cancer. Lipofuscin is really implicated in a lot of diseases. People say neurodegeneration, heart disease, atherosclerosis, macular degeneration.
Hmm.
Uh, those are big ones that are like kind of well known, but I would also put in there liver disease, um, kidney disease, pancreatic cancer, um, stomach issues, a colon issue. I mean, everything. Because you think about it, lipofuscin gets everywhere, and if it's caked full in the heart and the liver and the brain, it's going to find other areas. It'll just go throughout the entire body. I actually found an interesting study from 1959 that the heart accumulates 100 milligrams of lipofuscin per year. That was a Streller found that.
Whoa. It accumulates. Yeah, because it can't get rid of it, like you said, right?
It has no way, yeah, because the lysosomes, that rate of digesting the junk, breaking it down, recycling it is dramatically lowered or almost completely shut down.
Wow. You know what's
And so
crazy?
what
You know what's
yeah,
crazy about this whole thing is like even if there was a connection between lipofuscin, say, and like you said, cancer and heart disease, like those are the two main diseases, right? So even if you were to just if let's say that lipofuscin didn't affect anything else but those two diseases, dude, that's 50% or probably 75% of why people die. Like all people, like fixing those two things alone would change the planet.
it would. Yeah, and it's kind of scary when you read about it because there's not a lot of solutions that are talked about. I've heard of certain things, ginkgo biloba and vitamin E, uh,
Hmm.
vitamin A. I'm sure we'll talk about some solutions later. When you read about it, it's like incurable. It is impossible to get rid of,
Mm.
and it's like melted plastic, and it
Hmm.
becomes very scary. But that's definitely not my goal. It's just to scare people in doom and gloom, because there are a solution. And I mean, you don't even have to include supplements necessarily in the solution if you don't want to. I know a lot of people are against them, and I'm fine with that. I think there is a way to at least limit its accumulation. Um,
Yeah, it's crazy because all you hear about is this idea that omega-3 fish oils and like the DHA algae you were selling, and you hear this from every person. And it's just it's kind of disheartening, because the majority of the people that have the biggest platforms in the natural health arena are all promoting these supplements. And I don't know if they know or if they don't. If they know and continue to sell things, that's really concerning because then you're knowingly contributing to a disease process, right? But if you don't know, then that's just as bad too. Like, what? Why aren't you looking into these things, right? It's like crazy.
it is crazy. Yeah, it definitely led me back to Jesus Christ and Christianity, and I've had some shows on that. I
Hmm.
think Stephen Bancar's was really fun because he was in the quantum physics realm, and so that whole like 2 hour episode was largely about quantum physics, is related to Christianity in a way, or how they're different. Um, but yeah, it's definitely about integrity, and it's definitely brought me closer to God. This whole experience of um, realizing that not everyone's out to help other people. So I kind of lit a fire under, like, okay, time to ramp it up. Time to like be more serious in every aspect of my life.
Yeah, so that's so cool. It shows a lot of integrity too, like to walk away from a business that was that successful. And I remember talking to you on the phone during that process, and it was just a rough time. And during that time too, you're in the process of moving. And um, so more power to you, man. Like I'm super excited about what you're doing, and sharing this information because, like I said, not many people are talking about it. And if you can fix the top two reasons why people die, you're going to make it a huge impact on the world. And you, Adam Bergstrom, and some of your guests, and Morley, but Morley is more a fan of the cod liver oil and things like that. And I think like you, there's better ways to get retinol, than cod liver oil. But so going back to lipofuscinosis or yellow fat disease, as Adam Bergstrom calls it. So it's shutting down the lysosome, right, when we eat it, because it's really unnatural, right? seed oils and these omega-3 algae, like we never sort of evolved, or whatever the case may be, to eat that, right? That's just totally unnatural food.
Absolutely. Yeah. These extracts, whether they be in Myron glass, I know I used to buy certain primrose oil, or there's all these different seed oils.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, oh, it's in Myron glass and it's cold pressed and organic cold pressed seed oil and Myron glass. So it's completely safe, right? Well, wrong. Because when you put that in your body, it oxidizes because we're tropical, we're 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And I don't know where that didn't click for me for years. I just never got it. But once I kind of thought about it, that I'm not a cold water fish, I'm not deep under the water in frigid waters, I'm 98 degrees. And so when you put this oil that you're storing in the fridge in your hot body, it's like, I guess people believe that maybe there's these mechanisms, these antioxidant mechanisms that will neutralize the lipid peroxidation. But guess what? You have iron overload, and so your glutathione peroxidase, your catalase, your superoxide dismutase, all your main endogenous antioxidants are shut down already. And so people are just putting fuel on the fire with an already compromised system whenever they eat cold water fish or seafood consistently, and or take supplements or use these oils on their salad. And I'm a fan of olive oil. I don't take it besides in wild North American urban spice oregano oil, which I think is an amazing product.
Mm-hmm.
That MUFA, monounsaturated acids, which do have a lot of benefits. Even though there's some PUFA in there, I think it's outweighed. Um, but I get a lot of questions like, is avocado oil good? Is this good? Is that good? You can just look up online the fat composition of different cooking oils, and there's charts where it'll show PUFA, MUFA, and saturated fat.
Uh-huh.
And usually things are a combo. So I think canola oil is like 90 PUFA or 80% plus,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some mono and saturated fats in pretty much everything. So it's really about the balance and trying to go lower PUFA.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's even polyunsaturated fats in coconut oil, but like when I make my coffee, I'll use MCT, medium chain triglyceride, because that has no PUFA. But
Uh-huh.
if you don't want to supplement, then yeah, just use coconut oil in your coffee. It's fine.
Now, do you think, like, you know how Morley will say that we need like 1 milligram of iron,
Mm.
and the rest goes through the recycling system back to the bone marrow to make new red blood cells and all that stuff? Do we need any? Like for me, I just made my coffee drink, and we just use coconut oil.
Mhm.
And I've thought about, getting MCT and using that, but is it that big a deal? Like if we get a little bit, but I guess I mean, I've got stored tissues from a lifetime of eating garbage food, right? So probably any is not good at this point, right?
Yeah, I've heard Ray PhD, who is a huge influence of mine, say that 4 milligrams or less daily is a good thing to shoot for. But even realizing that an egg, which is a superfood, right?
Hmm.
Pastured egg is amazing. That has up to 1 gram of PUFA, depending on what the chickens ate.
Like one
Because
egg?
usually there's going to be some green. One egg, yeah.
Oh, geez. Okay, shoot. Okay,
Well, but no,
I
but
gotta work on that.
no, that's often my breakfast, because I don't want to get people into this orthorexic, because I used to be there, and
Totally.
I'm definitely not about restriction, except PUFA supplements and cold water seafood. So I'll often eat 3 eggs for breakfast, either scrambled or side sour bread or some cherries like I had this morning.
Hmm.
Um, Carbs and protein, try to combine that. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about eggs, because there is the saturated fat. There's the choline, which is huge for the liver to get that PUFA out. So really,
Okay.
as long as you can keep the liver chugging along, then you don't have to worry as much about lipofuscin. Really focusing on optimizing your liver health, which is almost
So,
opposite of what's talked about in the alternative health community.
yeah. Okay. So, like going back to what you were saying before, the brain, just to make sure I understand this right, the brain and the heart tends to accumulate lipofuscin in the lysosomes, and it can't really get rid of it. Kind of holds on to it, but then other cells throughout the body, it can get rid of it through mitosis, right? Cell division. Um, So is it just a matter of time for how many times a cell divides? Like, let's say you didn't introduce any PUFAs into your diet at all for like a certain amount of time, you're able to do that. Um, Over time, as cells divide, I guess it might take a decade, right, to actually get all this stuff out through cell division. Is that kind of?
It takes longer than changing out your tissue, the fat composition of your adipose tissue, because I found a study where you can kind of do the math. It's about 3 to 4 years um, of eating more saturated fats than unsaturated fats to actually change storage fat, what that's made of, to a more saturated uh, fat composition. But yeah, lipofuscin, it's so much deeper in the body that it definitely takes at least double as long, probably longer. And it probably depends also how old someone is. And so um, it's the best marker of aging is how much lipofuscin you have in your body. It's has nothing to do with time. It has to do with your choices and all the choices you've made that have caused you to biologically age. And so, of all the things, I mean, because people talk about glycation and cross linking, which is funny because unsaturated fats glycate 20 times more than sugars
Whoa.
do. It's and there is a cross linking effect of lipofuscin. That's kind of actually how it happens. It's oxidized fats, proteins, and iron cross fuscin, but you also have estrogen. Or, there's even metals, zinc, copper, aluminum. There's multiple things involved in it. But yeah, that's a good point about uh, cell division. I'm sure you could do the math and figure out, the average how long it takes your cells to divide, and then I would imagine though it would take at least 2 decades, and even longer if someone's let's say over the age of 50 or 60. It's always better if you start young. Even in the studies I've read on lipofuscin,
Hmm.
the anti-lipofuscin drugs, a lot of people are using pharmaceutical.
Hey,
It,
Matt, real quick. You said the anti-lipofuscin drugs, I think, and then after that it cut out. So what were you saying?
oh yeah, those work better with young rats in the study. But they
Ah,
found that when the rats are senescent or an older age, the anti-LF drugs don't work as well, which is
mm,
interesting. So it's kind of one
wow.
of those things. I'm young, I'm 32, and turn 33 soon, and it's I'm starting at a good age because if I waited till I was 50, it'd probably be too late.
Yeah, man. At your age, I was like four years into my 7-year raw vegan stint. So, oh well, it takes a while to wake up, right?
Yeah, and if someone is over the age of 50 or 60, I don't want to doom and gloom. It's definitely still possible. I think it really depends how motivated people are. Um, I've seen a lot of people chronologically older that just get apathetic. I'm sure you have as well.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest issue. That's why I love people like Raymond Pete and Adam Bergstrom that are just like juggernauts, hardcore, pedal to the metal, extreme. Those
Hmm.
are chronologically old people that I love because they really inspire me. That's how I want to be.
Yeah, because you listen to Ray Pete or you listen to Adam, and their brains and their minds are sharp. It's like with Ray Pete, it's like he's got so much information, he has to figure out how to disseminate it like in a clear way because his brain, I can tell, is going a mile a minute. And same with Adam Bergstrom too. They're just amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. And I also want to talk about the eyes for a little bit because I know that you and I are fascinated with light and light
Hmm.
therapy and sunlight, and I've looked into that. And I used to believe, and there's this myth going around that omega-3 DHA is really beneficial for the eyes. And I used to perpetuate this myth, unfortunately. And that actually is an integral part of the RPE cells in the eye, called the retinal pigmented epithelial cells. Um, and if there's actually a reason, Bashan, I think, or Bashan, that talked about the relationship with DHA, the eyes, and light in a quantum way or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, get like a quantum download. And I bought that because it was very enticing. But I don't anymore. It's just one study, and quantum physics is called theory for a reason because it's theoretical.
Mm-hmm.
But well, what's interesting is lipofuscin in the RPE cells in the eye and the retina. So the RPE cells, these pigmented epithelial cells, they're like ultra studded mitochondria, like super mitochondria in the retinal cells, because they have to be ultra sensitive to light because they run our circadian rhythm.
Uh-huh.
Um, they tell our pituitary gland when to release hormones, and there's the ubiquitin timing to mark cells for death. And
Mm-hmm.
all these things start with light in the eye, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is when you have lipofuscin in there, because it has an affinity for those cells, the RPE cells. When you shine blue light on those cells, the lipofuscin will actually emit a golden orange color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can see. Um, and even blue light will affect it. And so there's certain things that spread lipofuscin. Uh, UV light is one. Blue light um, is another one. And so um, the wavelengths actually of lipofuscin, it gets excited between 320 and 480 nanometers. That's in the ultraviolet range. And then the emission wavelength is in 460 to 630. So that's blue and green. Green's 555. So it's interesting that even light will cause it to spread or do its damage.
That's interesting. So, this idea of eating maybe some fried food, sitting on the beach, drinking a beer, probably not the best idea. Right?
Yeah, I really think that's why people are breaking down. I mean, they have, you know, really toxic acidic water in their aluminum cans. So they're drinking a little microdose of aluminum.
Uh huh.
And even if they're wearing sunglasses, which most people are, which I don't recommend, even with UV light, just wearing a hat's better,
Hmm.
I think as you do. But, there's photoreceptors on the skin. And so they're still getting hit with the UV. Um, Ultraviolet is the worst because that excites the lipofuscin. And like a zombie, it will spread to cells nearby. Um, and
So,
so
is that, I wonder if that, like, if the spreading itself is bad. Like, if it's spreading, I mean, people associate that like cancer spreading or whatever else, and that's a bad thing. But if it's spreading, isn't, wouldn't it be diluting? And so it's not as bad, but you might see it more, right? But maybe that's your body's way of like trying to keep you alive. But it's, I mean, it's still not good, but it may not be a bad thing, right?
possibly, yeah, that's an interesting point. I guess if it's spreading to cells that can divide, then that could be a beneficial thing. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more of a sign that it's so full in those cells in that area that it doesn't have anywhere to go, and so it just starts expanding out. Uh,
Wow, you know what's so crazy is like our friend, mutual friend Adam Bergstrom. He's been on your show a lot, and he's written like 11 books on this or something.
mm.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
11 books on yellow fat disease. Highly recommend that. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So it's what's interesting is like it messes up this one process of the lysosomes not being able to function, and then so that causes like these downstream processes to not work, right? So if one part of the cell's not working, then all of a sudden other parts of your body and other things in your body have to work in order to compensate for that, and you get this like energy drop, right? So how is it, do you think, lipofuscin influencing cancer growth, and how do you think that's working?
Um, First of all, can you see the chat on here, Justin? I just sent you a link on here. I don't know if you can open it. It's a graph.
Oh
Um,
shoot. Let's see. Did you send it on vmix? Let's see.
yeah, I sent it on vmix in the little chat. It's a
Shoot, let
good
me see.
it's a good visual of what's happening in the cell with
Let me,
lipofuscin.
I can't see it. Is there any way for you to send it to my email? Where's the chat? I'll share it on the show too.
Oh yeah, yeah, I can send it right now. Yeah,
Cool.
it's a good graph that shows the interrelationship with all the different processes because it's pretty complex.
Yeah, I bet.
um, let's see.
Let me go to my email.
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
like
you
you.
should.
I can't talk and I can't do two things at once. So let's see.
Yeah,
Okay.
you
So
should have it. It's just a little link.
did you send it
Um,
to
but
Justin
yeah,
Oakes? Okay.
uh-huh.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll find it. As soon as I find it, I'll show it on the screen.
Okay, cool.
Cool,
Yeah,
cool.
it shows the relationship with it's basically the cytosolic compartment of the cell. It was a good way for me to kind of visualize uh, what's happening with it. And it's funny, the guy that made this graph is a huge fan of pharmaceuticals,
No
unfortunately.
way. Wow.
But yeah, it's interesting that people that are so smart and know exactly the mechanisms don't often think of what's causing it, right? And natural ways to remedy it. But I guess that's why we're here to to
Right?
figure that
Totally.
out. Um, but yeah, um, as we talked about earlier, I don't I don't think I know the exact like step by step that would lead to cancer, but if you shut down the garbage center of your cell, there it goes. Yeah, look at the top left there,
Oh
lysosome
wow.
hydrolysis.
Oh my God.
That really breaks it down.
Whoa. Okay. Okay, so it says here the
Yeah.
lysosomes digest junk until they become filled with lipofuscin, and that's number one. And then two, ROS, reactive oxygen species,
Mhm.
oxidized proteins and lipids. Oh my God, this is crazy. Wow. So it says
Yep,
free ferritin, or what is it? What is
free
Fe?
iron.
Yeah,
Yeah,
iron, right?
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
No, yeah, that's great. That's just a great breakdown because there's so many little uh, you know, words that you kind of need to know. Going back to biology, um, like more enzymes are required from the Golgi apparatus. Uh, and so everything, like the whole cell is like struggling because the lysosome shut down. And that struggling, it's my understanding, the net effect is that it reduces ATP production. And so you have less energy production in the cell, which leads to uh, cancer development or cell death.
Mm-hmm.
One of those two. But we all know that less energy in the cell is the cause of pretty much every problem. I mean, if the cell doesn't have energy, it can't kick out junk,
Uh-huh.
right, or do anything.
So is
And
it
so
is it
that's
my understanding, like, am I correct in thinking that lipofuscin sort of chokes out the cells? Because you know how Morley will talk
yeah,
about one of the most important things is for the cell to be able to create energy or the mitochondria to be able to create ATP, and then working with oxygen, right? And those are the two most
yeah.
important things. Is it my understanding correct in that lipofuscin starves the body's ability to utilize oxygen, and that's part of the problem?
That is definitely part of the problem, and yeah, I think that's what I shared in the previous show with you. There's definitely multiple problems going on with lipofuscin. I would say this lysosome one is the easiest way to explain it to someone that's been under the spell for many years,
Uh-huh.
because it's proven. But it is my understanding that lipofuscin is an oxygen sink, that it is robbing oxygen
Mhm.
from the cell and diverting it to try to clear it or try to get this garbage out. Um, it's really the cell's really struggling when it has the lysosome shut down, and you have more reactive oxygen species going on, like the hydroxyl radical. That was really fascinating to me. I read about that recently with the hydroxyl radical. I didn't know that because I'm familiar with peroxynitrite,
Mhm.
which Mercola has talked about from non-native EMF, which is like
Mhm.
one of the big issues with non-native EMF is it causes peroxynitrite formation, which is a super free radical, but one on the same level, the same playing field as the hydroxyl radical. And what's interesting is molecular hydrogen neutralizes both of those, so
Oh
that's
wow.
kind of cool. Um, but yeah, we have solutions. I know in the cell, uh, uh, lipofuscin will impair telomeres or damage them. It will actually um, mess up the redox potential. It'll damage chromosomes, nuclear envelopes, which holds the DNA. It'll damage the mitochondria itself overall. Um, and another interesting thing that came upon my research is that iron accumulates in the lysosome. So I think it's kind of hard to talk about lipofuscin alone without talking about all of these other things contributing. Even estrogen, which is a
Hmm.
stress hormone that polyunsaturated fatty acids increase, or restricting carbs, you'll have increased estrogen, or
Hmm.
eating a huge bolus of protein by itself, you'll have increased estrogen. Um, but uh, that iron and estrogen really uh, make the lipofuscin worse.
Wow.
And yeah,
So lipofuscin seems to be like in and of itself a really dangerous thing, but it also sort of combines and oxidizes iron, estrogen, heavy metals, and they kind of all form into like just I guess lipofuscin, right? And that's the problem, right? So, I mean, iron is just as bad it seems too from the research I've looked at with Morley. I mean, it's crazy. It's a whole world in and of itself.
it is. Yeah, and I think that's why people are getting so many results on the root cause protocols, because when you take iron away, yeah, you're feeding pathogens less, but and you're reducing inflammation systemically, but you're also taking away lipofuscin to some degree. So whenever you lower PUFA, or displace or detoxify PUFA in your body, um, same as iron, you're pulling the rug out from under lipofuscin. And so I believe that's one way to get rid of it. I don't think it's proven yet. Like I said, most people are using more of a pharmaceutical approach.
Hmm.
Um, but Adams talked about Monsanto actually fighting yellow fat disease secretly with um, uh, ethoxyquin,
Oh, really?
which is a synthetic vitamin E. And so
Ah,
what I've seen on vitamin E is that it definitely reduces the accumulation of lipofuscin, so the rate of accumulation. Um, I don't know if it can get rid of it. It makes sense that it would to me, because just like calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, zinc, copper, that seesaw, vitamin E is on one end and PUFA is on another end. Um,
interesting.
Another one, uh, vitamin C is a sign of excess PUFA. I have a study on my vitamin E site that there are studies. If you just look at polyunsaturated fatty acids, vitamin E, PubMed, that PUFAs increase your vitamin E requirements by 6 times. So there are
Hmm.
certain like inferences, things that we can assume based on multiple studies, but I don't think they want us to know because this is like a root cause of many diseases.
Oh, yeah.
So it's one thing like we kind of have to read between the lines and figure out.
So what's interesting to me is, like I was telling you before, about how most people will tell you, oh, there's 2,000 studies, showing the benefits of fish oil or whatever else, DHA. Um, so maybe like, what would you say to someone who says, hey, Matt, there's 2,000 plus studies showing that the fish oil is good for you. It lowers inflammation. It's great for the heart. It improved my circulatory system. People have written into me saying like, I've been on fish oil and I see all these great benefits. Um, so what do you think about all those studies? Are they not looking at the right data, or was that whole George and Mildred Burr thing? Like, what was going on with that?
Yeah, it's similar to the Ansel Keys problem,
Uh huh.
where they blamed cholesterol and saturated fat uh, on heart disease, that it caused heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the China study. Uh, a lot of these studies can be set up in a certain way to give whatever result they desire. And you and I have researched blue wavelength artificial light to an extreme degree,
Mm-hmm.
and just shining artificial blue light on a rat will change the results. And so I believe it's absolutely possible to set up the design of a study to get your desired result of what you want.
Uh huh.
um, there's also a follow the money thing. And so looking at who funds the studies, which could maybe take weeks of research, but I'm sure people are doing that. I'm especially skeptical when I see a large university, especially one that was funded by the Rothschild family or Rockefeller Foundation, who we know
Yeah.
are not like great philanthropists, you know, ethical people, but people will say, "Oh wow, Harvard! Oh wow, Stanford! Oh wow." And I look at studies from those places and I say, I'm walking the other way because a lot of them are promoting resveratrol and things that are big money makers. I mean, the whole
Hmm.
resveratrol thing. You just look at Sertris and what happened there, selling to GlaxoSmithKline, which is a really evil company. And yeah, you just have to kind of see who's connected to who. Um,
Hmm.
so we're in a tricky situation. It's not like they want us to know the truth. Obviously,
Right.
everything's hidden. Even Google is set up in the search engine optimization where you have to put in certain things in quotes. So
Hmm.
yellow fat disease in quotes. Adam Bergstrom has said in a recent podcast, even using a swear word, he's put
Uh-huh.
Jesus in there, just random things with yellow fat disease to get what he's looking for. And so um, I've even found like DuckDuckGo is harder to search on than Google. So I'll often
Hmm.
use Google because it's easier to search and I can get what I'm looking for better. But yeah, it's difficult. I mean, Science Direct. There's some episodes on some articles on lipofuscin on there.
Hmm.
Just searching lipofuscin PubMed, Science Direct, different websites, you can get a breakdown of what it is. But there's nothing clear cut. There's not going to be a study that says stop your omega 3s. Omega 3s cause lipofuscin or yellow fat disease.
I know, right? How big is the omega-3 industry? It's got to be billions, right? Huge.
Yeah, I heard it's approaching 20 billion, even be more than that. And
Whoa.
it's really scary. I'd heard about squid oil the other. I didn't even know that was a thing,
Oh
but
yeah.
squid oil is another poop. Got to
Wow.
start including that in my list. But I remember krill oil was the last one I was on
Uh-huh.
before I went to algae oil, and years ago. And you look at just the krill industry, and I mean, even though there's so many krill in the ocean, that's the whale's food. And so if
Hmm.
you pull out all and just the way they do it, you're disrupting whole ecosystems. And so it's definitely not sustainable. I really promote ruminant animal consumption, uh, grass-fed local beef, bison, elk, deer, uh, and pastured eggs, from chickens ideally you own,
Yep.
and milk, ideally raw, and just getting into animal foods and the saturated fats, because it's interesting that a lot of the conversation with PUFA is really geared towards vegans. Like, you're deficient, you're vegan, you're deficient in omega 3s. It's like, no, you want to avoid it. That's
Yeah.
actually one of the benefits of your fruitarian diet is that there's no omega 3.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah. So like your CLF protocol is pretty cool, and it's like on the physical level, it's a foundational, right, as part of
Mhm.
your work. And right now we're talking about lipofuscin, but it's calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. I'm just curious, why wasn't the iron piece in that? Do you think
Um, in which
in
in
the
the
CLF?
CLF, or
Yeah, in the CLF protocol.
I kind of lumped it in the L with lipofuscin.
Oh, okay.
I guess I could make it like CILF or something, but I just look at iron and lipofuscin as like one and the same. The hack of lipofuscin as a whole, then you're taking care of it. And I definitely, every client I speak to, have you done the full Monty Iron panel? It's like a
Hmm.
big thing. And I have no financial affiliation. They have no affiliate program on
Hmm.
request.com. But do you know your iron saturation percent? That's a big question because people are coming at me. I had a woman message me this morning. I have Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disease, and uh, people are dealing with a lot of different diseases. And could it be as simple as calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis? Absolutely. What I always say, though, too, as a caveat, is that The CLF protocol is immediate, uh, relatively immediate to where you get results immediately, but it'll all come back if they're still living that same lifestyle, that's promoting it. And so, for example, you could donate iron, donate blood, get a blood test, you know, once a quarter, twice a year, lower your iron saturation, eating beef liver multiple times a week to get your bioavailable copper. But if someone's not doing that and they just do the CLF protocol, then they'll still have those problems reoccurring. And so these are long term accumulations that are caused by the decisions that we make. And so I have it listed there in the article, multiple things, guzzling spring water, bottled spring water in glass that's very popular. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
tons of calcium in there. Um, and I believe we should be getting most of our calcium from dairy, which is ionized calcium, and it's the ideal form. Unless you're growing, your greens house with filtered water, then I think you can get your calcium from greens. But most people are not doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting because too, you think about like fibrosis, and it seems like that may be like a downstream reaction of the body to lipofuscin and iron accumulation. Because when you have two things happening, over time, you get this like spider-like sort of fibrosis, fibrotic organs, and those organs shrink over time, and then I mean, it's crazy. Like, imagine if your liver just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, it's going to not work right. And then that causes, I mean, with 500 functions, that could cause any number of problems, right?
Great point. Yeah, fibrosis definitely shrink. It's like a shrink wrap
Yeah.
on your organs and glands. So just shrinking your body, and that might be the hardest one of the whole protocol to get rid of because it requires the most work. Because there's definitely a body work component. I
Mhm.
admittedly still have a long way to go, and there's people that are fanatical about trigger pointing and
Mhm.
functional what's it called, functional patterns. Just these
Uh-huh.
different. There's all these things of biomechanics. That's the word I was looking at,
Mhm.
and people get obsessed with that. But I just think simple massage is enough. But you definitely need that physical, whether it's a vibrational tool on the body or ideally with hands or rumble rolling or someone walking on you. You
Mhm.
definitely need that physical stimulus to break up the fibrosis. Systemic enzymes will help, it'll soften it up and it'll start to dissolve it. But really pressing it, and that's why you're often sore after massage. You
Mhm.
can definitely uh, improve your massage benefits by just taking some magnesium bicarbonate and some systemic enzymes before
Mhm.
you go in, and ideally some Shilajit.
Yeah. Well,
um,
you're looking at the organs because like you're just talking about like fascia, right? Like your tendons and ligaments and joints and muscle and things. But if you've got fibrosis happening in your liver or in your brain or your heart, obviously body work's not going to touch that. So that's sort of where enzymes come in. And what other things could be done for those organs, do you think?
vitamin E is a really big deal that is often overlooked for brain, heart, and liver health because when you take a fat soluble vitamin, whether it be A and D, which I only recommend getting from food, or E and K, which I recommend supplementing, the liver will take up 90% of that. And so that's why I'm a big fan of megadosing vitamin E and K2 menaquinone 7 or K27 is because when you take a high enough dose, it'll get outside the liver throughout the entire body. So it'll get to your heart, to your brain, to your kidneys, to your gonads.
Mhm.
K27 is involved in testosterone from males, and it will get throughout the body to where it will improve mitochondrial function. Vitamin E is an estrogen antagonist, it's an aromatase inhibitor. That alone will increase ATP production in the cell. Um, K27 is a quinone that acts just like coenzyme Q10. So that is an electron donor. It bypasses complex 3. So if you have mitochondrial dysfunction, you're on K27, you can actually still generate energy, which can have a huge effect at getting lipofuscin out of the cell. So there's really a thousand ways to go about improving mitochondrial health, but I like to start with fat soluble vitamins, E and K27, because those are widely deficient in people. If you have calcification, you have a K2 deficiency. And if you have PUFAs in your body, you have a vitamin E deficiency. So just filling those two gaps will do a lot for those 500 functions in your liver, and just getting that up and then getting it throughout the entire body, you're really improving cellular energy production everywhere.
That's awesome. That's cool, Matt. Hey, do you want to do some questions, and then maybe after that we'll talk about some of your supplements? Would that be cool?
Yeah, let's do it. And I just want to say one last thing on lipofuscin I wanted to cover. There's a disease called Stargardt disease,
Oh.
Stargardt,
Oh.
and there's an interesting article that I found last night on it, that it's all about the eyes and lipofuscin. And it's really funny the way that they word it, because they say that the eye can't clear away. This is the cause of the Stargardt disease. The eye cannot clear away a byproduct of vitamin A metabolism, in quotes, known as lipofuscin, which accumulates at the back of the eye. And so these people are claiming that lipofuscin is caused by vitamin A metabolism, which is hilarious.
Wow.
And yeah, I don't know if I have the article still pulled up. Yeah, it's the
It's
UK Southampton researchers. If you search Southampton researchers, rare eye condition.
okay. I'll find
Uh,
that. Southampton's Hamptons. And then what is it?
yeah, stomach ulcer drug, eye condition, that should come up,
Drug
or
condition.
lipofuscin, something like that. It'll be the first.
Okay, Southampton research trial stomach ulcer drug.
That's it. That's the one. Yep.
Okay, let me bring that up on the show here. Okay, let's see if it's
Yeah,
this
affects
one.
1 in 10,000 children. Uh,
Whoa.
Most common form of juvenile macular degeneration, causing a
Oh,
gradual decline in vision, ultimately blindness. And here's the interesting part: patients are advised to avoid exposure to bright light and wear UV blocking sunglasses to
wait,
try to
where does this? Where
slow.
does this say this?
That's one, two,
A little
four
further down.
paragraphs down.
One. Patients are.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my
It starts with
gosh.
whilst,
Okay,
right?
here we go. Yeah, it says here, whilst a number of interventions are being investigated, there's currently no known available treatment for the condition, and patients are advised to avoid exposure to bright light and wear UV blocking. Wow. Wow.
So they'd be better just getting red light therapy. There's multiple companies out there. Maybe limiting the sun, still getting it, but doing red light therapy first and vitamin E first, and wearing blue blocking glasses. I mean, that would be huge for people with this issue, Stargardt disease. And yeah, that stomach ulcer drug, soraprezan, is interesting because the stomach ulcer drug removes lipofuscin from the cells. That's what a
Really?
German university found. And it's actually a proton pump inhibitor. I was looking it
Mm-hmm.
up. It actually works with potassium and inhibiting hydrogen ions excreting into the GI tract, which is interesting. It's like, I wonder, there's so many connections to be made. I don't know why a proton pump inhibitor would help.
Wow, that's crazy, right?
But
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
I'm looking at your CLF protocol right now, and it says what's interesting is it says for every one age spot pigment visible in the skin, there are up to 100,000 present below the skin tissue. Often we do not need a blood test to figure out what we have wrong with us. And in the case of lipofuscin, all you need to do is take off your clothes and see it. They are most often visible in the areas that get the most sunlight, like the forehead and forearms. That's nuts, man. That's crazy.
Yep. Yeah. Once you see it, you can't unsee it too. We all have grandparents, or you've seen elderly people with these spots, and I don't know why people have never made the connection of what that's caused by. I guess they just assume that it's a, you know, chronological age. That's what happens. You get
Or
these weird brown looking discolorations on the skin.
Or they just say
But it's
liver
definitely
spots, right?
not
Oh,
natural.
it's just liver. Oh, that's a liver
Right.
spot. Oh well, no big deal, right? Uh,
Just 500 functions,
yeah. Well, it's
no
funny because
worries.
with myself, like I'm noticing more of these spots coming up in me as well. And even being in the natural health world, like I only just came onto this information relatively, within the last 5 years, and so I've had 38 years or whatever, of eating. Even when I was doing raw vegan and doing all these other things, it was super high in all these things. And so I'm saying this in myself now, like little spots on my hand. And so, just because you're like vegan or just because you think you're eating a really great diet doesn't mean that you didn't eat for 20, 30 years all this excess iron, excess lipofuscin, rancid oils. These are all proliferating in our tissues, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, people are shocked often to find them on their body when they're on a really extreme health protocol. And even a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the prominent biohackers, the prominent doctors in the alternative health field, I mean, brain doctors,
Uh-huh.
neurosurgeons, multiple different ones.
Yeah.
I just see a lot of them have that balding, that receding hairline. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
balding and lipofuscin kind of go together because that's going to throw off the hormones. Danny Roddy has some good material on male hair loss, but that's a real epidemic right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's just increased prolactin. There's lots of different things going on. I'd
Mm-hmm.
imagine iron overload, excess estrogen, excess prolactin. But the lipofuscin's a big one that doesn't just affect hair growth, but also just brain function. And it's really scary to see spots all over right there because that that's getting deeper into the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And the most interesting aspect to lipofuscin to me is when we sleep. I've always been fascinated with sleep since I started this health journey.
Mm-hmm.
And going from grounding, direct rod to earth, and just magnetico, and just going through
Yeah.
these phases of experimenting and steps with improving and optimizing my sleep, which is like a constant obsession. Uh, we regenerate when we sleep. We know that there's the lymphatic system, and there's this brain washing, and our cerebrospinal fluid gets pumped up to our brain and washes plaques out, and that's why or that's partly why we rested when we get up. That's a big reason. But if all this lipofuscin's there, then our brain actually cannot regenerate, and we actually have lipid peroxidation happening while we're sleeping, and so there's damage occurring,
Wow.
especially when your liver is depleted of glycogen because maybe someone's not having carbs, especially before bed. A lot of people require some milk or some orange juice, or I do ice cream before bed, and that keeps my liver topped off with glycogen so that I'm not stressed throughout the night,
Mm-hmm.
and I can actually, um, uh, you know, when I run out of that, hopefully there's more saturated fat than unsaturated fat in my brain, and so I'm not having this destructive process happening,
Mm-hmm.
um, where it's trying to utilize the PUFAs to generate energy, because that's another aspect to PUFAs. It's what you consume in the moment, but long term what's stored, and both do damage. So
Right. Yeah, right. Because you have the accumulation of this stuff over decades of your life, and that's that storage PUFA, right? That's going up the lysosome and causing the cell to be unable to sort of, prevent or to do autophagy and things. And so, eating this stuff over a lifetime, it stores in your tissues, much like iron, right?
absolutely, yeah, and they're more breakdown products. Like there's lots of them. Uh, Aldehyde is probably the main one, and so aldehyde is a breakdown of alcohol. You enjoy some red wine or
Uh huh.
tequila or whatever kind of alcoholic beverage you like, made of ethanol, which will break down partly into aldehyde, and so that's actually what's responsible for the alcohol hangover. Uh, but people were having a long-term chronic hangover that's caused by PUFAs, and that is the aldehyde byproduct of PUFA breakdown. And so that's just one of the product. There's multiple that PUFAs break down into. So this is kind of a fun area to study because there's so many aspects to it, and
Yeah.
it's really endless to find. Oh, this is causing that, and this is causing this, and I'm just gonna keep diving into it because it's fun.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because like I'm kind of with you. Like there's a lot of people that are dealing with certain like health conditions, like everyone, I mean there's like probably a million of them. Like, oh, I've got like receding hairline, I've got I'm tired, I can't sleep, or I've got diabetes or whatever. But it's almost like in the natural health world, like we want to focus on these like high-end things, like all these things that are, I think, super advanced, whether they're protocols or trying to describe what's going on. But really, like, if you fix the if you get to the CLF, like the calcification, lipofuscin, fibrosis, and I have to retrain my brain because I keep thinking that you left out iron, but iron is part of the lipofuscin, right? So if you fix that and then your body's optimized and working correctly, like all of these downstream diseases, I mean, you might sound like a broken record, but if you fix that, if you get on that protocol and fix the foundation, I mean, everything is going to work right. And I would imagine certain diseases or health challenges would simply start diminishing over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a heavy emphasizer of the animal-based nutrition, because that bioavailable copper, even from whole food vitamin C, but also beef liver, it plays a really, really big role. The retinol, the real vitamin A
Hmm.
in liver, and milk, and cheese, and all of these animal foods, they work together perfectly with the CLF. And so, if I ever work with a recovering vegan, which I have,
Yeah.
it's like get them on the animal-based, high quality animal products diet or nutrition. Then you do the CLF protocol, and then you have both aspects. And then little things like pristine water, and shower filter, and blue blocking glasses, and these are things that really help. Um, the more people can implement at once, definitely the faster results they'll see.
Hmm.
But not many people are gung ho.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if they understand, like you had on your guest recently, Beverly, on your podcast, Lady B on Instagram, and that was an awesome show. And she just went all in, right? So people do go all in, which is great.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. It inspires me because I got into health, not from a really debilitating illness, but I had brain fog and acne, and I had eczema off and on growing up. And um, these are signs of stress. I mean, brain fog, mostly deficiency, but the skin disorders are largely caused by stress. And so that led me to researching the metabolism and healing the metabolism. And now I'm a huge proponent of eating breakfast, ideally within 30 minutes upon waking, but even an hour.
Hmm.
Even if it's just a sip of milk right when you wake up, if it's going to be a little bit, or bottle, thing of milk, and really just kind of trying to lower that cortisol as much as you can, because um, excess cortisol causes a lot of issues, and I believe it makes this whole CLF issue worse when you're stressed out.
Oh yeah.
So you can't stress about it as
Yeah.
crazy as the situation is.
Oh my gosh, that's such a never-ending cycle. So one final thing on the lipofuscin, because I want to talk about iron as part of that. And for those of you that have not heard our shows with Morley Robbins or Matt's shows, I think he's been on Matt's podcast like 5 or 6 times, and he's been on our show maybe the same amount of times. And he's like you were mentioning, he's a mineral expert, right? So he talks a lot about iron and how iron plays into all this. So as part of the lipofuscin sort of section of your CLF protocol, just tell people a little bit about what iron's doing in the body and why it's so bad if someone's new to all this information.
Yeah, so um, people think of iron, and they often think of iron deficiency anemia.
Hmm.
And people think, oh, vegans don't have iron; they need iron. And uh, if you're eating red meat, you have to be careful with iron. And there's so many like little misconceptions and just immediate thoughts that come up when the word iron is mentioned. But uh, there's different forms of iron. There's heme iron, there's non-heme iron, and organic iron, inorganic iron, and there's iron in the food, and there's iron in the water. And we have to look at the context of where we're at today on planet Earth with the iron in the food and the water, and it's not good. So,
Yeah.
uh, So burning fossil fuels or bunker fuel, which they recently supposedly stopped using,
Uh-huh.
creates air pollution. And air pollution creates water pollution. So what comes up must come down. Um, Burning uh, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide creates sulfuric and nitric acid. And these fall to the earth either through dry deposition when it's dry or through rainfall. And this ends up in our aquifers, our lakes, our rivers, our streams, our uh, soil, and ultimately in our bodies, in your bathtub, in your sink. And that's where that rust happens because it's the hydrological cycle, right? And that cycle is grabbing iron uh, from the earth, which is one of the most prevalent minerals in the earth's crust. And right now, that's in excess amounts because this rain is over 10 to 100 times or more acidic than it should be. And I had a guest on my podcast that's posting this weekend. We went into this, Jeff Lawton, uh, the permaculturist,
Hmm.
and acid rain is an issue for a lot of reasons, but not many people have connected the dots that people with pristine hydro have. But this iron issue with acid rain, that's that's what causes the iron in the water. And so that means that spring water is out because if you're drinking spring water, you're getting tons of excess iron. And you don't have to look, you don't have to look at articles or take my word for it. You go to the spring, you bring your jug, you look at the pipe coming out of the ground, it's rust. That rust is iron that's going in you. It's
Hmm.
accumulating in you.
Yeah.
And so whether you're buying bottled spring water at the store or collecting it yourself, assume there's iron in it and acid rain.
Hmm.
And so, rust in the bathtub, rust in your sink, that's iron everywhere. And then you have iron fortified foods. So we were all raised on that crackers, cereal, and I used to eat Honey Nut Cheerios, and Lucky Charms,
Oh, yeah,
and
those are the
I was
best.
likely getting right.
Those are the best.
the, the milk, even though it was factory, it was probably the best part. Was the milk probably actually kept me alive. um, I
Yeah.
think plant-based milks are way worse than factory farm 2% milk that I was doing. So I'm sure there was still some retinol in there, and
Yeah.
that probably saved my life. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, 50 plus, probably 70 milligrams. I would also have 2, 3 bowls often. So
Uh-huh.
I was getting way more than 1 milligram, the required dose of iron.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, it goes back to what Morley talks about, the reticuloendothelial system, the iron recycling program.
Hmm.
Uh, that's what recycles our iron. But when that's shut down, then you can't get rid of the iron. And so it just gets stuck in the body, in the lysosomes, the macrophages, everywhere. Um, and that's called iron overload. And it causes systemic oxidative stress. So basically, your body's chronically inflamed. You have uh, chronic inflammation, usually pain, brain fog, depression, anxiety, heart disease, liver issues, eye issues. Diabetes is a big one. Um,
Hmm.
just blood sugar imbalance is often caused by iron overload. And so people will blame, they'll go on a sugar free diet where actually the sugar would help them with this situation because
Hmm.
the liver needs glycogen to do its 500 functions.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, there's great books on it, revealing the hidden dangers of iron overload. There's certain books that I've read that are really good that go through all the studies. Um, but it's something that accumulates in the body, and people don't realize like we have no mechanism to get rid of it besides menstrual bleeding in women or bloodletting. And so a male's only option, and even a female doesn't release enough through menstrual
Hmm.
bleeding. Yep, that's the book. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so blood donation, as Morley's talked about, he's the master of, of iron. Uh, twice a year, maybe once a quarter. Some people have done, um, or getting a blood test. I just heard recently it was Beverly that texted me yesterday that now if you get a blood test, they're requiring the coronavirus test, which is kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah, dude. So
Scary.
this is what. So I was doing blood donation every, I think, 3 months because of my raw vegan diet. For so long. So I was working on this, and up until so I was scheduled to give blood in June of this year, and I think I donated in February, and I was going to do it again in June, and then and then this whole thing happened. And so then I've been calling around and I've been trying to find a way to donate blood that doesn't test. People think they test for the coronavirus. They're really just testing for exosomes, but we won't go into that whole thing. But what is a real problem is that if this whole contact tracing thing, and if you have children, that's an even bigger problem. So I haven't been able to donate blood for a month, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. Have you come up with any solutions?
I mean, maybe leeches. I bought some. I've just been so busy on the farm. We're still building out our goat shed in the back with
Uh-huh.
the doe and the buck. Just a lot going on. But leech therapy might, but that's kind of freaky. I mean, there's teeth and they grow and it's kind of freaky. But maybe finding a good phlebotomist is probably the most practical
Mm-hmm.
solution for most people. Um, I know you can buy your own kit, but it's just kind of scary. I wish there was like an easy kit or a machine. Someday
Mm-hmm.
there has to be like something you just strap on your arm, you press a button, and it's all automated, and you're done. Like
Dude,
there
I
has to be a machine like
is there a new Mitolife product coming? I think so,
the
right?
blood grabber. Yeah.
That would be awesome, dude. You need to make that. That would be
Yeah,
so cool.
definitely have to watch out for the FDA on that one.
Well, that's the thing is finding. I know you can search on Google like mobile phlebotomist or traveling phlebotomist and stuff, but the problem is that many of those places too, I've called up and they test for COVID.. It's like a standard thing, So I don't know what they do with your blood. Like, what if you had a next door neighbor that was, which I do, that is a phlebotomist, and I were to convince her to extract my blood? Like, how could she get rid of it? Do you think? Do you think that she'd be under any kind of? I mean, I don't know how she would discard the blood. That'd be weird.
So just pour it in the garden.
I know, right? Yeah, totally. She could, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it really depends on the integrity of the person and what they believe about this whole thing. I'm sure there's phlebotomists that understand that this whole thing is a twisted joke,
Hmm.
and that, like you said, the whole exosomes thing, it's just ridiculous. Um, yeah, I wonder too, like if it depends on whether you're donating or getting a blood test for other things. But I guess if you're getting a blood test for other things, they'll say, "Hey, do you want to throw this in for free?"
Yeah, it's funny because most of the places they'll advertise it as like this great thing. Hey, we're now checking for coronavirus. It's like, dude, that's the last thing I want. But even if a place said they're not going to, I would still be a little bit remiss. I'd be really kind of worried. Like, what are they going to do with my blood once it's out of my body? I don't know what they're going to do with it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's a freaky, unfortunate situation. Maybe leeches are the best. I know there's a little like I looked into it. It's called herudotherapy. If you want to look it up on YouTube, I'm sure there's videos, but there's little leech tubes you can buy, and you just put the leech in the plastic tube, and then you just put it on your skin. Because if when you pull it off, it can be kind of difficult. But they actually make little tubes and forceps, and there's ways to do it. And of course, you would never reuse the same leech for other people, but it's something that I'm still kind of looking into and considering. I think the phlebotomist would be the most practical, better way to go about it.
hmm.
Um, I mean, some people could be allergic to they secrete like 100 different things in your blood too, so that's
Hmm.
another factor to consider.
Wait,
But
leeches will do that?
yeah, they have a natural anesthetic in their saliva, but in their saliva there's around 100 different compounds. It's similar to kind of bee venom therapy as far as the benefits that there's all these side benefits to it besides getting rid of blood, because these compounds will kind of upregulate the immune system,
Oh,
its
interesting.
ability to function.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I might be buying some leeches
Yeah.
soon. Oh man.
Yeah, we could start a movement. It's definitely something I'm still kind of looking into. I'm very careful with things. It looks like I might jump into things, but I take sometimes a year or two of looking into it before I do it. So,
Yeah, totally. All right, you want to do a few questions?
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Let's see here. Let me look through. Mark
By the
said
way,
before. Oh, what is
got a
that?
new coffee mug, by the way, and the you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you
Oh,
free.
nice. Where does it say that?
Oh, it looks like it's all white in the camera, huh?
Oh, yeah, it looks all white. Does it say that on there?
It does. Yeah, it's kind of. Oh, maybe it's this side. Let's see.
Oh, there
There
we
we go.
go. Nice. Oh, that's awesome,
Yeah,
dude. So
yeah.
true,
Have to have a good coffee mug.
right? Totally. Mark says here, Mark Baptiste said, Matt, so this is before we started. He was telling me on the chat, Matt has helped me out big time since January of 2020. I'm coming back to life, which can be scary at times.
Oh,
That's
that's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah. Okay, let me scroll through and see if I can find any questions here. Yeah, if you guys can type them in all caps. And then after the questions, we're going to talk a little bit about some of Matt's products, and I'll share with you a discount code too if you guys want to pick up some of them and try them, which I highly recommend you do. Spencer says, when you talk about everyone having iron overload, is that the same thing as hemochromatosis? You recommend donating blood 4 times a year, but someone with hemochromatosis has to donate weekly.
Yeah, I believe that hemochromatosis can be um, reversed. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
some people say it's a genetic thing, but I think there's multiple things you could do to get that under control. I mean, speaking of coffee, people don't recognize the power of coffee. Not only hormonally, if you have the carbs and proteins to support it in the background, just a healthy functioning metabolism, but it inhibits iron absorption. Um, uh, and it's a great source of magnesium and multiple other minerals. Um, but I would say just focusing on the copper for someone in that situation, someone with hemochromatosis, really making sure they're getting a ton of copper in. Um, because if you have iron overload, you're going to have copper deficiency because you don't have enough copper to regulate it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if they're really afraid of, iron and beef liver, which is a 1 to 30 ratio of iron to copper, then they could just do whole food vitamin C. Um, I like Purely C capsules from North America, or just local berries. We just foraged a bunch of huckleberries here, uh,
Nice.
and there's thistleberries. There's a ton of different berries up here in Idaho. But berries in general are a great source of bioavailable copper, and you don't have to go to Camu Camu or Amla,
Mm-hmm.
although those are great. Uh, but yeah, I would just slam the whole food vitamin C. Honey also has vitamin C, depending on the source. Um, Bee pollen is really great. Um,
And
but yeah, I
oysters
mean,
too,
it's
right? And oysters?
oysters are great for copper. Yeah, I mean that's one thing I didn't mention. I'm a big fan of oysters and clams. The
Mm-hmm.
shellfish I think are very beneficial, even though they have omega 3s in them. So it's worth
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
because of the minerals that are hard to get. But yeah, I'd say with that
So
person, just keep measuring.
okay. Daryl is like he's listening. He's just like, dude, get to the solution. So Daryl wants to know. So how do you get rid of? So we're talking about lipofuscin, and he's like, okay, so how do you get rid of it? Simple question, right? Simple yet complex.
Right. Yeah. So I look at it as just supporting mitochondrial ATP production. So mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell, the power plant, generate. It's responsible for generating the energy of the cell. We need to do as much as we can to support that, but especially in the liver. And so the liver is what gets really hit hard with the PUFAs. And
Mm-hmm.
there's this process called glucuronidation, which is how our liver gets rid of the polyunsaturated fatty acids. And that process um, really requires carbohydrates to make the glucuronic acid. It's a different mechanism when it comes from carbohydrates versus gluconeogenesis. And I actually posted a study on that recently. And so, maple syrup, raw honey, fruits, roots like white potatoes are really great. Those are my favorite carbohydrates. Local seasonal fruit, um, even white rice, uh, wild rice. My friend Ben's company, Wild Food Warehouse, and also animal protein. So whether it be milk, cheese, eggs, red meat, gelatin, even if someone's really sensitive, they could probably do gelatin and milk. That would be, or bone broth and milk. That would be sufficient for protein.
Mm-hmm.
But really supporting the system with those macronutrients, and saturated fat is kind of just icing on the cake. It's not required because your body can make it from carbohydrate, but it's beneficial to displace the PUFA. And so you get saturated fat in your pastured eggs and your milk and your red meat, all of these things, and that will help to displace it. So there's multiple things to do. Um, it's not just a few things to get rid of lipofuscin,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but vitamin E is a really big one. So when someone has a ton of lipofuscin, they will be vitamin E deficient. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've been recommending D-alpha tocopherol. I am upgrading my vitamin E supplement, so that'll be out at the end of next month, hopefully sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And basically mixed tocopherols in MCT oil, and especially the D-alpha tocopherol that really helps to support the liver function and to get the PUFA and the lipofuscin out.
Okay, cool. We got a question here from Andrew. He says he's giving blood on Monday, and he recommended prep to ease the stress on my body.
Um, yeah, a lot of people get faint or dizzy after they give blood. I used to have that problem, and that's usually poor adrenal function. And so, just making sure that you're getting in sodium and vitamin C can be very helpful. Whole food vitamin C, not ascorbic acid,
Uh-huh. Right.
and sodium. So I usually use the Shen Blossom little Bio Ocean little shots, little glass beakers you break. Um,
Mm-hmm.
those are I definitely feel those, especially if I'm underslept or just need an extra boost. Especially hot day, those are really good. Or just Morton's pickling salt, that works too. Just heavily salting your food to taste. Um, and then I would say like 2 to 4 grams a day of whole food vitamin C is kind of a good thing to shoot for.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more leading up to the blood test, but yeah, it's mainly the adrenals you want to support for that.
And what about copper? Do you think copper, beef liver, or something like that before you donate?
Yeah, that could definitely help. I know some blood tests say to fast for 12 hours before or whatever, but that's usually not the case, especially in Morley's Full Monty Panel. You don't have to. And yeah, copper always helps. So beef liver helps with tons of things. That's Nothing makes me feel as good as beef liver. I remember the first time I tried it after doing the desiccated capsules, which are still good,
Uh-huh.
but just doing the real thing, bison liver, just in cubes, just swallowing it. It's like
Mm-hmm.
my brain was like buzzing for I think like an hour or two the first time I ever had it.
Wow, that's so cool. All right, cool. Another question here. Lennon wants to know, what are your thoughts on Gilbert Ling and Gerald Pollack's cell model?
Yeah, I haven't looked too deeply into it. I know they're a huge inspiration to Ray Pete and Danny Roddy and other people in that community, Georgie Dinkoff. Um, yeah, I haven't looked too deep into it because I've been focused more on the lipofuscin. But I know Ling especially questions the uh, lipid bilayer hypothesis,
Mm-hmm.
and Ray really questions the pumps. That even the pumps exist. I
Mm-hmm.
think Adam's on that same wave.
Yeah, he is.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's something that's really interesting. I haven't seen it really articulated in a way to me that makes sense. Repeat kind of did in a Silicon Valley Institute lecture a little bit, but he didn't really, besides saying it's a conspiracy, he didn't really go too deep into it. Um, but yeah, they're saying basically the cell is not just a sac surrounded by fat. it's
Right.
it's different from that. It's more of like an electrical uh, process. Um, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I can't speak too much on it.
Yeah, it's funny too because Adam says that too, right? There is no such thing as a cell membrane, and it's really through osmosis or this osmotic electrical charge that allows things to enter and leave. But it's not really like a lipid membrane. But then on the other hand, you see people, or a lot of people I know, most everyone talks about the cell membrane and this, that, and the other. So it's it's kind of hard to know, right?
Yeah, it might just be a like a language thing, just like so people are on the same page that just use that language. But if it's fundamentally wrong, then it would probably change all the conversations, right?
Oh,
So,
totally. Another question here. Let's see. Mark wants to know how about hydrogen gas for traumatic brain injuries. What do you think?
yeah, I'm a big fan. I was inhaling 3 to 4 years ago in Big Bear when I was living there, 3% hydrogen gas, or no, I think it was 2%, something like that.
Hmm.
And I definitely felt it. Um, I've definitely had tremendous results on inhaling molecular hydrogen gas. I think it's something down the line. Like you should definitely do all of the foundational stuff before going to that.
Hmm.
But like me, I live out in the woods. If I had a medical emergency, which I wouldn't, they wouldn't get to me in time. And so I kind of set this place up like a hospital in a way to where I have multiple things ready for various different. I get Lyme disease. I'm going to go to this. I get, various different things. Oh, yeah, I think it's very beneficial for people maybe going through chemotherapy or uh, they're like it's very protective against radiation. But
Hmm.
also just being in a non-native EMF environment. Like if I was still living in the deep city with 5G, I could not live there without my molecular hydrogen inhaler. That
Hmm.
would be a must to. Um, I definitely feel lighter in my brain. I mean, even being out of the city, we're blanketed in radiation just living on planet Earth, and so just inhaling that, I always feel like a lightness in my brain, and that's probably the proxy nitrite that is neutralizing.
Hmm. Yeah, so we had George Wiseman on a couple weeks ago, and then we had what's his name, Tyler, on from the Molecular Hydrogen Institute, and I was just like reiterating to people that, like, these devices could be a couple $1,000, and people constantly think, oh, I'm not going to heal unless I have this device, or, and if I don't have this product or whatever, and I was just encouraging people to do the foundational work, like. I feel like it's my job to sort of put things out there. And so each person might be like you, Matt, where you're super advanced and you can get a hydrogen machine. But if you're still struggling at the beginning of your health journey, I definitely wouldn't do hydrogen first. Although it's a great thing to have. And if you want to spend the money on it, amazing. But I just want people to know it's there. But at the same time, it's like, let's focus on like the CLF protocol and the root cause protocol and these things first to get to the root cause of our health issues.
Yeah, well said. I feel like that's a really important disclaimer to make because I've been criticized in the past, like, when I was in my heavy biohacking days, and I'm still into biohacking. I think it's beneficial, I guess not the mainstream way of doing it, but yeah, that disclaimer must be made because people will think they have to spend 10 grand or 20 grand to heal, and they really don't have to spend anything. I mean, sometimes it might just be moving
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they'll get a job that pays more because they're healthier and they're more functional and they're able to be more of service to people, and so they'll make more money. And in that sense, so there's like ways of going about it. A lot of the time, they're just in a toxic environment, and so just finding a way, not saving up for a machine, but saving up to move out of a really toxic place, getting out of a relationship or toxic home or city or whatever to somewhere that they will thrive is really the thing to prioritize, not a machine.
Yeah, totally. All right, one final little question here before we talk about some of your products. I want people to know about them. Kind of a little conversation going on, and I'll read a couple of the comments, and then you can comment. Um, let's see. Okay, so Spencer says ideal iron and copper ratio in the diet with a question mark, and then Lennon says 1 milligram of iron is the minimal you need. You need 25 milligrams, but your body recycles 24 from the red blood cells. And then Andrew says beef liver is 30-1 copper iron. Not sure the ideal human ratio though. Would like to know that as well. So people are kind of talking about this ideal ratio of copper to iron. What do you think? So that'll be the last question. Then we'll talk about some of your products.
I'm actually not sure. I don't know if that's ever been figured out. I mean, it definitely depends on your iron exposure. I would I would imagine that would alter your copper requirement. if someone's drinking pristine water without iron in it, then they're getting less. They're not eating iron fortified foods. They're not eating a
Hmm.
ton of grains, um, or they're not on a carnivore. If someone's on a carnivore diet versus not, they're going to be
Right.
getting different levels of iron. Or juicing vegetables, which can have a ton of iron in it, from just the current agricultural NPK system.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's too much context there to say the ideal ratio. I would say go by the blood tests. And as Beverly said on my show, once you see that iron saturation percent, that's really the eye opener, because there's all these, TIBC and all of these like transferrin, and
Hmm.
you can get kind of confused. But just saying, whoa, I'm 55% saturated with iron, that's a big deal,
That's
Um,
huge. Wow. Is that what
so
she
kind of
was?
going from
I forgot what she said. What did she say? It's 50%. She was.
I think she was up in the 40s. I don't think she was pretty close to 50% though, and that's why she wasn't healing. She was trying all the biohacking things, all the different, she was
Wow.
drinking molecular hydrogen, doing all the different things, and she wasn't getting any results because she wasn't taking away the iron. So,
Well, it's
um,
fascinating too because when you think
but
about like you mentioned earlier, it's not just like what's the proper iron to copper ratio in my diet today. We're actually making dietary decisions and lifestyle environmental decisions based on what we were consuming or living under or doing when we were like 12 years old, right? So like you have this iron stored in your tissues. It can't get on those enzymes and get back to the bone marrow to make new red blood cells, so it's all storing in there. And so iron fortification project in 41 and 69, and in recent times even more. And then you have all this PUFA that we've been consuming all of our life. And copper has been going down in the soils. I don't know, it's like lowered by 60, 70%, I've heard. So you have this lowered copper. So it's like we're trying to fix the sins of our past almost.
yeah, that's a good point. And I've had people ask me, how much beef liver should I eat? Is it every day? Is it every other day? How many ounces? And I say be intuitive with it. And if you don't want to be intuitive, then get the blood test once a quarter and go off that.
Hmm.
But I did every day for a while, beef liver, and I didn't count. I just had my little bowl. I took it out of the freezer and just swallowed cubes. It goes amazing with coffee.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Really, really good with coffee, and it's like the ultimate nootropic. But yeah, I would say just be intuitive with it. And for a while, I was doing, I think, maybe 4 ounces every single day, and I felt
Hmm.
great.
Wow.
Um, but ideally, you go off that iron panel. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I actually just had Jeff Lawton on the show. It'll either be up today or tomorrow. Hopefully today,
Oh, cool. I
so
was
to
going to ask
record
you. That's
into an
awesome.
outro. Yeah, he's like the world's expert on NPK fertilizer, and he has some lectures up. He has a lot of material on YouTube, but
Yeah, I've
we
seen
went
those.
pretty
Yeah.
deep into the NPK thing. Yeah,
That's awesome.
he's yeah,
Yeah,
he was really about the pH. So he said we can neutralize a lot, even tap water going into the soil if we balance the pH. So utilizing like mulch and biochar and indigenous microorganisms and uh, various
yeah.
things. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
really complex. Yeah.
I mean, that piece is super important, right? Because people are drinking mega dosing, hyper concentrating vegetables, that have been part of this hydrological cycle, which is accumulating not just iron, but all kinds of other chemicals as well. And so, like every now and then I'll have a vegetable juice. Like I think I had my first one a couple days ago. And it was the first time in like a year I've had vegetable juice, and it tasted really good, and I do love it. But when you do that, you're bringing in these compounds, right? So it's an issue for people like doing it every single day, right?
Yeah, I think the everyday thing, and if you could do like wild grain juices, that might be the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw a guest on my podcast about on 3 times, Dr. Cass Ingram, made like a dandelion strawberry leaf or something, and like multiple different wild greens and a little
Wow.
smoothie. I think he used the NutriBullet, but it just looked. It's like this is really fibrous because he didn't spray.
That guy, he's so cool. He's so funny, isn't he? It's just like he's just a loose cannon almost, huh?
Yes. Yeah, I like having people like that on my show. It's a lot of fun. But
That's so
yeah, I think
cool.
there can be benefits. Like I'll probably drink green juice someday. It's just if the vegetables are grown in good soil and it's not store bought, because that was most of the questions I got for that episode.
Hmm.
You really want to learn how to build soil, and um, you can use peat moss. It's a good starter. Compost, learning how to do compost. You could ferment your milk and throw that in the compost, or ferment fish skins and throw that in. And
Hmm.
there's a few inputs, but largely it's just learning how to build the soil, and then not giving it chloramine water or
Hmm.
iron filled tap water or whatever it is, well water. Yeah, I mean, you can just assume most of the produce you consume was grown in tap water. That's just a very safe assumption to make.
Yeah, even if it's organic, and it's a big deal. Huge.
Mhm.
All right, so I tell people about your products all the time, and I love supporting you and your work. And there's a lot of supplements that people can buy, and like you were mentioning before, the fish oil is like $1 billion industry, and that's just one supplement of literally hundreds. But what I like about yours is like you're focusing on the mitochondria, which is why your brand is called Mitolife, but respiration, the utilization of oxygen, and the decreasing of calcification. So your products are really good for that, and these are the core issues with what's going on with people's health. So I'm going to bring some of your products up if you're cool with that. And I just want to get your thoughts on a couple of these. Dairy Absorb is a really cool one. Let me bring this one up right here. So this is Dairy Absorb, and you've only had this one. This was a later product you added, right?
It is, yeah, and that was actually inspired by ice cream because uh,
That's awesome.
because I was posting bowls of I don't recommend dryers or any of the big brands. Um, I like a Double Rainbow. It's a good San Francisco company, but there's it's usually easy to get in California, but there's multiple other brands that are decent.
Hmm.
I think some in Washington, Tillamook has like an old fashioned vanilla recipe that's decent, but people have to kind of just try different ones. But even milk or cheese, if someone doesn't want to go the ice cream route, I was getting tons of messages of people saying that they get gassy or bloated or they don't feel good on dairy. And so I wanted to offer this lactase enzyme supplement to help people out as it's helped me, especially transitioning from veganism like I did years ago, or even if you're not vegan, even if you've been paleo and restricting dairy or whatever diet you've been on. If you haven't eaten dairy for a while, then your body actually loses the ability to make that lactase enzyme. And so just by consuming small amounts over time, you can upregulate uh, the production of lactase to digest the lactose, which is the primary sugar found in dairy. But this supplement is just kind of like a kickstart. I'll often take 4 capsules at a time when I have my little bowl of ice cream, and I'll put the Shen Blossom Reishi syrup on there. And
Uh-huh.
that's delicious. It's 2 ingredient little um, meal there. And I feel really good having that before bed. I usually watch some YouTube, one of your videos, or Patrick Timpone or something. It's my
Yeah,
ice
right.
cream.
Totally. Yeah, and this one is cool too. Let me put this on the screen. Digest it all, because enzymes are obviously the spark of life, right? And these are necessary for every biological and cellular process. So digest it all. So is this mainly for like if people want to consume like meat and things, or would someone want to take digest it all no matter what they're eating?
They can take it with any meal or snack. Yeah, this is largely for people that are extremely um, compromised. I know a lot of people have issues just digesting anything. They have tons of allergies and tons of issues going on. I think that's largely enzyme deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is another formula that they'll upgrade. I'm constantly upgrading all of the formulas, but just kind of simplifying it.
Mm-hmm.
But as it stands now, it's largely protease, a very significant amount of protease, which digests protein, breaks down protein into amino acids so the body can absorb it. And so that also helps with just any kind of inflammation in the gut, which can be just proteins that aren't digested. And it takes the stress off the pancreas. That's a really easy way to think about it. And so people that are under stress, they have tons of cortisol and adrenaline from doing too much keto, too much intermittent fasting. Then the pancreas actually decreases its enzyme production by 50%.
Uh-huh.
That's what that clinical research showed. And so, and it makes sense when you're stressed out and you're in fear, you're running from a wild animal, you're not going to be digesting your food. And so,
Mhm.
anything we could do to help. Of course, there's multiple ways to lower stress, just eating alone, but you actually have to absorb what you're eating. And so
Mhm.
this is like another one of those little boosters. It's also good for anti-aging if someone just wants to. They don't have access to fresh, fertilized, pastured eggs from chickens right out their back door. If they don't have, like me, I walk out my back door and milk the udders, have pure enzymes and Sanan goat, raw goat milk, tons of enzymes there. A lot of people don't have access to enzymes. I mean, the fruits and vegetables in stores have been sitting there
Mhm.
for weeks and you can taste it. If you ever go blueberry picking on a farm or strawberry picking and you just right from the bush, right from the tree, you feel a difference
Mhm.
versus from the health food store, fruit or vegetable. It's not the same kind of feeling.
Mhm. And this one, what I like about this one, Dissolve It All, I got first turned on to systemic proteolytic enzymes years ago when I learned about William Donald Kelly and the protocol from Nicholas Gonzalez before he bizarrely kind of passed away. But he was doing all kinds of work with people with pancreatic cancers and different types of cancers, and a lot of those cancer therapies would have super high doses. Like I heard of even people taking 100 capsules of these a day, if they're on some cancer therapy. But Dissolve It All, like if you don't have cancers, like it's going throughout your body, right? And dissolving and eating up like Pac-Man, different, toxins and things in your blood, right? And things that are causing issues.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Systemic enzymes are Pac-Men that go throughout the body. It's called lysing. So they're proteolytic enzymes. So they're breaking down exogenous proteins that your body has tagged that shouldn't be there. And so there's an intelligent process where your body says, hey, it puts a mark on this protein, just like marking a cell for death with ubiquitin. Same
Mm-hmm.
process happens with proteins. And um, what these do, serrapeptase and nattokinase. Serrapeptase is a bacteria that was first derived from the Japanese silkworm. That's what silkworm uses to dissolve its cocoon. And nattokinase it was originally derived from fermented soybean. But they're both just cultured. We don't take them from silkworms or farm silkworms or take it right from soy. They're just bacteria that are continually cultured. But they're very effective at breaking down unwanted proteins in the body. And this could be biofilms, which people are into, these shields that these pathogens create so that your immune system can't get to them. It will break down biofilms. It will break down scar tissue. People that have just had surgery often use systemic enzyme therapy to recover faster because you can actually have runaway scar tissue formation as the body's healing. If it's not in balance, minerals aren't in balance, then you'll have runaway scar tissue formation that doesn't stop. And so by taking systemic enzymes, you can stop that cycle in its tracks, which is really cool. Or for just old scars that you've had for a long time, very effective. And as we talked about, it will actually prevent the shrinking of the organs and the
Mm-hmm.
glands from that fibrosis. And so everyone's under an inflammation attack from iron, lipofuscin, calcification, and any kind of stress on the body will create scar tissue, which is fibrin or fibrosis. And so that's where systemic enzyme therapy comes in. Just 3 capsules when you wake up, 3 before bed. You could double it up if you're feeling like it. 6 when you wake up, 6 before bed, just in between meals or even right before a meal. And it can really help. And like you said, high dose. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
big fan of megadosing. I kind of set Mitolife up in that way so that if you want to take tons of the products, they're very safe. of course,
Hmm.
consult your doctor.
Yeah. What I used to do, and I like doing, is taking them, a ton of them before bed, like right before bed, and then just having that work in my system during the night.
Yeah, and a really good combo for that is to take a bunch of those with the probiotic. I've been taking those 3 strains before I go to bed, and I like taking them before bed just because everything's kind of slowed down.
Hmm.
And I've been getting some cool feedback with that because endotoxin, this lipopolysaccharide, that's another aspect to this whole issue because that increases the oxidation of iron by quite a bit.
Hmm.
um, it's about 23 times. So endotoxin is like a potentiator.
Hmm.
So you have endotoxin potentiating iron, which is potentiating lipofuscin. So um, that could be very, very beneficial. But yeah, high dose. I mean, the more the better with the systemic enzymes. I still have to experiment and try like a bottle in a day and see how I feel.
That's I love that. Now this one's really cool too. Your Panacea product, because for a long time I was taking Intramax and I really loved that. But then after looking at it some time ago, it had quite a bit of or not quite a bit, but it did contain iron, and so I kind of ditched that one. But a way to get your minerals, like there's 92 minerals plus, give or take a few, but Panacea, this Shilajit product, is really foundational as part of your work, right?
Yeah, and this is one that's I'm really passionate about because I've been taking Shilajit for like 6, 7 years now on a daily basis, and it's absolutely changed my life. When I was vegan, when I was vegetarian, I was on Shilajit, and I think it saved me. It's a compressed resin in the high elevation mountains. It's found even in the Rocky Mountains, the Himalayan mountains, the Siberian mountains, which is where my product is sourced from in Russia. And it's animal and plant matter over thousands of years that's been uh, pretty much fermented or complexed into this pitch tar resin, this really hard material that almost is like asphalt. It's like really hard
Mm-hmm.
material, but your body can break it down and it loves it because it contains a significant amount of natural occurring fulvic acid. And fulvic acid is when it's in Shilajit, which is a whole food supplement, is able to chelate and complex all monovalent and divalent atoms, uh, one of which being inorganic iron that could actually work with. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's also a source of bioavailable copper, all the minerals, known and unknown, in the perfect ratios, complex with fulvic acid. It's actually a significant source of carbon. A lot of people are into activated charcoal now and
Uh-huh.
C60. It is pure carbon. And carbon will actually act like a sponge to toxins. The surface area is so insane that it'll form a long chain of carbon, bind to it, and then you'll just excrete. It'll make it inert, so it just goes right through you. This is why I never worry about things like geoengineering spraying or glyphosate or any of the countless barrages of toxicity that we're encountering today: pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, larvicides, etc. They all get bound to carbon. And so I take Shilajit when I drink coffee, 5 tablets, or when I
Wow.
go out to eat, take 5 tablets. And most people are underdosing it. They're taking 200 milligrams or less, which is not enough. I believe 500 milligrams to 1 gram
Mm-hmm.
is the range you have to be in. And there's a great study on testosterone I have posted on there that just 500 milligrams a day for 90 days increased free and total testosterone in males.
Wow. How much did it increase?
I believe it was 30 to 40%. It was in that range. It
Wow.
was pretty significant. And I get a lot of questions like, Matt, since taking Shilajit, my libido has gone way up. Is that a problem? I say, no, that's a great sign. Like,
That's a problem.
uh,
That's so funny. Matt, I
yep.
feel healthier now that I take Shilajit. Is that a problem? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's
The only thing, Oh, it's good. Go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the caveat with Shilajit, it works best if you're on magnesium bicarbonate and or acid-free water. And so, kind of not doing the spring water thing while taking Shilajit, it works better. Because if you
Hmm.
take Shilajit and you're on acid rain spring water, you're just dumping acid on acid. So
Right.
you want to put only the fulvic acid in, and then ideally you're having bicarbonates coming in.
So we talked a little bit about this, today, the vitamin E. So how is vitamin E an antagonist to polyunsaturated fatty acid? Because this is your product, PUFA Protect, and you're upgrading it soon, or you have updated already?
It's in the works actually. Yeah,
Okay.
and there's a limited supply as we speak actually of 200 bottles or so. Hopefully, they probably won't even last through the day of this formula.
Oh, cool.
and
Okay.
I'll just be making it more of a mixed because of the whole coronavirus stuff. Things were a bit delayed with shipping, but in a few weeks it will be more of a balance of mixed and a higher dose. So I'm trying to have people take less pills because people don't like taking handfuls of pills.
Totally.
But
Yeah.
um, to answer your question, how it works, if you buy into the lipid membrane hypothesis, the conventional view is that vitamin E protects from the oxidation of fatty acids in the cell membrane. And so, if you don't believe there's a cell membrane, who knows? But what's interesting is that vitamin E is built in to all foods containing PUFAs in nature. And so, whether it be an egg from a chicken, an egg from any bird, whether it be milk, which has polyunsaturated fatty acids, also has vitamin E. Egg
Hmm.
also has vitamin E. Grass-fed beef, has omega threes, but it also has a vitamin E. And so wherever you find omega-3 DHA in nature, isn't it interesting? You always find vitamin E. Sunflower seeds, um,
Hmm.
cashews, almonds, walnuts, any nut or seed. And what's interesting is that the PUFA is actually there for a purpose. So it's protecting the nut or the seed, especially if an animal eats it. So if an animal eats the seed, the PUFA will protect it from being digested because it inhibits protein absorption. So
Oh,
the
okay.
seed has this coating on it, and so it just the animal poops the nut or the seed out undigested, whether it be a human, a dog, or a deer,
Yeah.
and it will get it will go back into the earth, rain come down, and it will sprout into a plant. And so it survived. Right, the
Hmm.
plant was able to propagate itself, but the vitamin E in there protects it from oxidation. So um, think of grass. Grass actually contains polyunsaturated fatty acids. That's how the cows get them when they eat the grass. But there's also vitamin E in there. And so when that heavy sunlight's hitting the grass, that heavy ultraviolet light, there's vitamin E in the grass to protect the PUFAs in there from oxidizing. But we're in
Mm.
an interesting situation where we've had an insane amount of canola oil, of seed oils, of omega-3 supplements, especially is the biggest problem, um, of a heavy cold water seafood diet
Hmm.
because we thought it was good for the brain, and not a lot of vitamin E with it. Maybe a little bit, but not a lot. And
Hmm.
so, what we're doing here with vitamin E supplementation or vitamin E therapy is just tipping the scales and reversing it. So, instead of having a ton of PUFA and a little bit of vitamin E, we're having a lot of vitamin E and barely any PUFA. And so, that's bringing more balance to the system. And um, yeah, it's multiple mechanisms. Um, it's interesting that vitamin E didn't gain popularity until the 80s. It was actually Wilfred E. Shute that went against the medical system by using it in Canada with heart disease patients. And he helped over 40,000 patients with heart disease just with high dose vitamin E therapy. The Shute brothers also worked with diabetes, um, multiple different conditions, neurodegeneration, uh, eye conditions, um, even mental retardation. I have some studies there on my site
Really?
that that it also helps reverse that. Because to me, brain fog is a process of oxidative stress. And what's the biggest source of oxidative stress? Lipid peroxidation. And um, irons causing lipid peroxidation with the ALOX enzymes, upregulating those. And we have so many factors just increasing lipid peroxidation. And so, what vitamin E is doing is it's just putting out the fire of lipid peroxidation. So, it's an anti stress thing, it's a hormonal thing because it blocks estrogen at the receptor level, and it's a aromatase inhibitor. So, it blocks the flipping of testosterone into estrogen, the stress
Mm-hmm.
hormone. And so just by lowering stress, by lowering estrogen, by blocking estrogen from getting to the cell, that alone can increase ATP production, which can have huge downstreams on the body.
Mm-hmm. Totally. A while back, we had Kate Rayon Blue on, and she wrote the calcium paradox, I think, and she talked a lot about vitamin K2. And so, whenever I mention to people, or when they ask me about, oral health, teeth health, cardiovascular diseases, these types of things, it's all like, where does calcium get placed in the body, and what is it doing? And so. Your K2 is called purely K, but it's not just K2, right? It's a series of different vitamins, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. She actually wrote a really great book uh, on vitamin K, the calcium paradox. That's probably the best one in the world that I've seen on that can the research on K2. So with vitamin K, um, there's different forms of it, and I've even seen there's K27 or K7, K8, K9.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these different Ks, not
Yeah.
dogs, but K9. There's
Yeah.
and so K1 and K2 are the biggest ones, non-pharmaceutical, that people come into contact with. And K1 is primarily found in plants, green leafy plants. That's
Mm-hmm.
called phyloquinone. So in my supplement sourced from evening primrose, and that's what gives it a nice smell. When you open the bottle, you smell it. Smells really good. I do it every
Nice.
time just to kind of get that effect. Whenever
Yeah.
I take any capsule, unless it doesn't smell like anything, even beef liver, I'll smell it first just to kind of give my body that information. But this is primarily K1, K2, 4, and K2, 7. And
Okay.
so MK4 and MK7 are uh, the main vitamin K2. And if you look at vitamin K2 supplements, most of them are just menaquinone 4. And so you'll see dropper supplements, various supplements, MK4. That is
Mm-hmm.
not the best form. And you can get that very easily in animal foods, from cheese, from milk, from uh, various animal foods. It's in it. But the menaquinone 7 or MK7 is very hard to get, especially in high doses. You'd have to
Mm-hmm.
eat blocks of aged cheese to get
Mm-hmm.
that dose. It's only found in natto and aged cheese,
I was gonna say natto, and that's
K7.
disgusting.
I used to try to make it,
Yeah.
it was hard to make, and it didn't taste the best. So, yeah, and I couldn't find a K2 supplement that had the dose that I wanted and that didn't have hormone D with it, something called vitamin D, and it didn't have zinc with it or any other like cofactor. I'm kind
Mm-hmm.
of moving away from cofactors. I'll be shifting my whole brand that direction over time. It takes time, but these cofactors just are not necessary if you eat a balanced, diet and nutrition. And so, 400 micrograms of menaquinone 7 in 2 capsules. That's a huge dose. And I'll often take 4, 6, 8 a day. And my goal is to get up to 2,000 plus micrograms a day of K27. And I've seen in the research that has phenomenal benefits, especially for testosterone. I posted one recently that K27 is very, very beneficial for men's testosterone. But it was a certain, in the rats, it was like 75 micrograms per kilogram,
Mm-hmm.
something in that range. So for me, that ended up being around 2,000 plus microgram. But again, it's one of those things, most people are underdosing it, just like vitamins, taking 400 IUs a day. To
Mm-hmm.
me, that is underdosing. Shilajit, 200 milligrams a day or less. A lot of people are taking a lot of the wrong stuff and not enough of the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, people are taking fish oil. They're taking iron. Like, imagine taking fish oil and iron as part of your supplements. I mean, you're just and not taking magnesium. You know, it's just crazy.
it is absolutely crazy. Yeah, and to me, when I look at like a recovering vegan or a recovering carnivore, which are kind of similar strategies in a way, there's a large E and K deficiency, and both of them help with mitochondrial ATP production. On the product page of vitamin K, the purely K, I
Mm-hmm.
have all of the mitochondrial benefits. Um, Protects from complex 4 inhibition, supplies complex 3 cofactors, protects from mitochondrial dysfunction. It'll actually carry electrons from complex 1 to 3. Um,
Oh wow.
Tons of different benefits for the mitochondria, and it's a quinone. So, like coenzyme 10, I mean, same thing as methylene blue. These are almost in the same category
Mm-hmm.
as a quinone. So, they could have huge benefits. I mean, methylene blue is being used for all sorts of different viral things, like in the context of what we're dealing with today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are just missing this foundational piece that the liver uses. I mean, A, D, E, and K, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to supplement A and D. Get those from food. Take E and K in sufficient doses, and your liver will love you for it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're doing the K supplement without the D in there. You know, I like supporting Daniel Vitalis and I like his stuff too, but I don't tell anyone to buy his D3K2 supplement because I don't think you should be supplementing exogenous vitamin D. I think you should be making it in your skin and learning how to optimize your diet so that your skin can uptake the vitamin D it needs. You know, and have that happen. You know, so I like that you're doing the K aside from D3.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, next weekend I'll be having my first three-way interview with Morley and Jim Stevenson, all about hormone D and why you shouldn't supplement it.
Oh,
And
cool. Is Jim Steve? Is he the guy that runs the Seco Steroid group on Facebook? Oh,
yep,
great. Yeah, he's going
yeah.
to be on our show too. I've reached out to him, so that's cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, this information really has to go out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think people that have the info sometimes are timid. I know I was for years, but even if you don't know, you have to know all the mechanisms and show enough. So it's like, here, you might want to look into this. It's at least a direction
Yeah,
for
it's
people
crazy,
to
right?
research.
Because you start thinking, okay, sugar, glycogen, your liver runs on it, right? Don't take iron, don't take omega 3, don't take vitamin D3. Like you did a whole show about what supplements to avoid, and these are all the supplements being touted by most people. You know, it's totally opposite. You know, it's nuts.
It's funny. Yeah, and then you combine that with the really extreme, like I did OMAD, 23
Uh huh.
hours fasting a day,
Mm-hmm.
or restricting macronutrients. I have a friend, Raw Matt, that I think is kind of succeeding on, like, he's very smart genetics and explaining, but very rare. It's like people
Mm-hmm.
need a balance of macronutrients. Most people are going to need animal products, especially
Mm-hmm.
to recover from what we were raised with,
Mm-hmm.
all the barrage of things. I mean, non-native EMF, artificial light, iron overload,
That's crazy.
uh, tons of issues. So
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you're doing the work that you're doing, you know, because I feel like it's so foundational and there's so many different things that people could be doing, super high tech stuff and different protocols and getting into all kinds of like ancillary aspects of health, but, you know, really building the foundation, iron, lipofuscin, and getting rid of these things, lowering your stress and these types of things are super, super important. And I think that if people focus on that, you know, as really a way to focus on your foundation. Then you can start building out your environment. You can start optimizing your environment. And you talk a lot about this in your Instagram stories, which I recommend people watch. Um, so what's new? Like what's coming down the pipe? Because I've been, getting on you, dude. When are you going to come out with a magnesium supplement? Or when, are you going to be coming out with new supplements or new tools or anything like that coming soon?
yeah, the magnesium is very close, probably a couple weeks, hopefully, and that will be. I can't say too much. I'm still keeping it. I like to keep things a secret pretty much until the day they're released. But it will be a type of magnesium bicarbonate supplement that will make the
Ah.
whole process easier for people. And yeah, I've been a proponent of magnesium bicarbonate for years now,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's one of those foundational things that works really well with Shilajit. I think
Mm-hmm.
synergistically um, to to support the entire system because you have the bicarbonate buffering system that
Mm-hmm.
neutralizes acids and even acids that we're breathing. Um, there's tons of issues, but the magnesium burn rate, as I'm sure your listeners are aware of,
Mm-hmm.
is probably the biggest issue. And so that's another thing. People are underdosing and they're taking the wrong form of magnesium.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to take enough when you take capsules of magnesium.
Mm-hmm.
I find the liquid makes more sense, which is magnesium bicarbonate, mag HCO3 is the only liquid form of magnesium bicarbonate. I believe is the most natural. It's what we used to get
Mm-hmm.
in our water supply, and it's not there anymore. I am considering coming out with a lipofuscin detox product. I'm just uh, trying to think of a safe way to do it because it's heading into the biohacking realm when I go that way because
Uh-huh.
there's not really a natural substance that I've found that does it. We're more talking about kind of pharmaceutical, paracetam kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, um, where it's more like a nootropic powder,
Mm-hmm.
which I guess I'm not opposed to, but again, that will be more advanced. That will not be the first thing I recommend to people on the protocol. That will be
Totally.
like down the line. But it is fun. Like that graph I showed you during the interview, the John
Mm-hmm.
Ferber guy. It's funny because I think he was working. This was years ago on a patent for a lipofuscin drug that supposedly took lipofuscin out of the cells. But that's a scary
Really?
thing to me to think that you need to buy a patented drug to take lipofuscin out of your body.
Yeah, right. If it's
That
that
sounds
important that it needs a patent, that's crazy. Wow. Yeah, something like that and a way to detox. I wonder, like you said, leeches, but if we could figure out a way to get rid of iron in the blood and get rid of lipofuscin, like those are, and then, a magnesium bicarbonate. I mean, I have the soda sparkle and I learned how to make it from you, but if there's an easier way to do that too, that's huge.
Yeah, I think with the iron issue, I know most of the people in the iron overload community are not taking Shilajit, possibly because some scare about the iron itself that's in Shilajit.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's like, why would I want to put it in? But it's like, why are you eating beef liver? Because there's iron in that too.
Right.
But people don't realize the power of that fulvic acid. And there's studies if you look up Shilajit anemia, um, but I don't think it's well understood how Shilajit is improving the anemia. I believe it's through chelating iron out of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that everyone that's hip to this knowledge of excess iron, iron poisoning, iron overload
Mm-hmm.
should be on Shilajit with the bioavailable copper. And that's really the combination where they'll see tremendous results. And
Mm-hmm.
even if they just did those two and they could only donate once or twice a year, I think that would be hugely beneficial. That's probably most of the benefits that comes from Shilajit actually is its effects on iron, but it's also supplying indium and all of these trace minerals that we never hear about. Indium's responsible for blood sugar regulation and
Mm-hmm.
digestion of sugar, and our body uses minerals for enzymes to work, and so there's a ton of minerals out there, and
Mm-hmm.
they're definitely not in our soil. So
Yeah, and when people start thinking, like I hear all the time, like I think even Mercola said this once, like, oh, magnesium, it is responsible for 300 enzymes to work, and I think like what Morley said, I think it's like 3,752 or something enzymes of your 9,000 that like it's 40+%, right, of your metabolic function is relying on magnesium. So no wonder why we're so deficient.
yeah, and what's interesting is the magnesium recycling program. and it's able to recycle about 50% of magnesium.
Hmm.
Requires, from my research, from when I looked into it, for you to not be under stress. And so that
Oh.
means you're not restricting sugar to me. Because if you're restricting carbohydrate, the primary fuel of the body's glucose, high school biology 101, then you are under stress. And so you're not recycling your magnesium. So you need more magnesium. So that's
Hmm.
another argument for me in favor of sugar and why that's
Hmm.
a required macronutrient in the body. And you don't need to do sucrose, cane sugar like I do. You can do honey or maple syrup. And I do
Hmm.
maple syrup in all my coffee. About probably half this cup was maple syrup. I just
No
mixed it with
way,
milk
dude. That's so much.
frother.
Seriously, that much?
I've
Wow.
been experimenting with high dosing. Yeah, probably up to like maybe 3 to 4 ounces of sucrose a day, just as an experiment. So
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. It's like Adam Bergstrom when he's, 5 pounds of sugar a month or something he does.
he kind of
uh,
inspired me.
uh,
Yeah.
that's so
Uh,
funny. Well, dude, thanks so much for being on the show. Like, I just encourage people to listen to your podcast, follow your Instagram stories, and consider purchasing some of your products. I did want to tell people that we do have a discount. So, Matt, I want to thank you for giving our listeners a discount to your product, dude. It's EHR 15, and so that's like a 15% off. And so, if you guys want to purchase any of these products, I would highly recommend looking at your supplements and asking yourself why you're taking them, and asking yourself, do I need to be taking them, and can I get these things from food? And there are certain supplements that are sort of like foundational in terms of like biomechanics and how your body works, like enzymes and things like that. Like you're not going to get your proteolytic enzymes. You will from food, but the whole point of them is to take them away from food so they do the work they're supposed to be doing. Shilajit, like where are you getting your minerals? And so all these things that you're doing, I really recommend people consider. Get off your iron supplements, get off your freaking omega-3s, get off of all these other supplements that you're taking, and look into the research and start taking some of yours, because the lowering of testosterone in our culture and the rise of estrogen, these are big deals, especially for cancer growth and things like that. So it's really something to be mindful of. So, dude, all that to say, thanks for doing what you're doing, man.
Oh, thank you, Justin, for doing what you're doing. You inspire me all the time, and you're my favorite show. I love it, and yeah, it's really an honor to come on here and spread the word of yellow fat disease and lipofuscin. And I would say if someone's new to this information, just dive in, listen to Ray Pete, Adam Bergstrom, Georgie Dinkoff, Danny Roddy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people. I mean, it's really endless. It's really how much time do you have? And most
Mm-hmm.
people, I don't think, have a lot of time to delve in. I mean, at some point we have to, take people's word for it that are trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're just in your office on your computer all day looking at studies. Is this
Yeah.
real? I would say just go out and look at people's forehead and forearms and elderly people, and usually the hands. I mean, that brown.
Mm-hmm.
You can even just look up online yellow fat disease and
Mm-hmm.
images and check it out. It's scary, it's real, but we have solutions, and work on the foundation before you get into advanced biohacking techniques.
Totally, totally. So your podcast comes out every Friday, right?
That's correct. Yeah, new episode every Friday. And I usually do a Q&A. So if you follow me on Instagram, I'll usually post a Q&A, and I try to get to most of the questions. And if I don't answer them, like in this recent one, I usually do my best to answer them myself
Mm-hmm.
at the end.
Mm-hmm. So, dude, your show, "What I Would Do If I Had Cancer," was awesome, by the way. And
Oh, thanks.
yeah, so as a podcaster, I listen to lots of other podcasts, but the only one I really share is yours, because I feel like you're right on the cutting edge, and you're not just pimping out products. And if you do have a product that you find is damaging people, like you walked away from your DHA product, there's so much integrity with that. So you're the only product or podcast that I like to share, because I want people to be turned on to the stuff you're talking about. So, are you? So that to say, I love when you do your solo shows. Like those are awesome. Like you share a lot of really good information, and sometimes it's like better than the guests, that you have on. I love it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you actually inspired me, especially with that "What I Would Do If I Had Cancer" episode. And sometimes it's hard for me to think about what to talk about in the solo show because there's so many things, but there's no way for me to keep up with social media messages. There's so many people that I can't respond to. And so oftentimes I'll take like frequently asked questions and just build that into a post or an episode that I share. But that's the cool thing about social media. I feel like that's one of the benefits to it,
Hmm.
as damaging as it can be with the EMFs and the blue light and the dopamine hits. But just seeing the pulse of the community and seeing what people are focusing on, what people are saying, how people are feeling, what they want to learn, and what they're doing, and then kind of responding to that is a very good way to go about it, because I think that helps more people instead of just going off on my own thing.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, dude, all right. Thanks for being on, dude, and you're welcome anytime. So if you come out with something new, or if you want to do even break down fibrosis and calcification, or if you want to do a whole thing on iron, like anytime you want to come on, just let me know because like I love your work and what you do. So just let me know.
Oh, I really appreciate that, Justin. And likewise, I really want to get you on the show. It'd be really fun.
Ah,
And
thanks, dude.
yeah, maybe when I come out with the magnesium, we could do one on calcification because I don't think people realize when they have calcification, they have magnesium and K2 deficiency. There could also be boron deficiency,
Hmm.
but mainly K2 and magnesium. So that could help with a lot of chronic pain. I know a lot of people, especially over the 40, are dealing with chronic back pain or various things. And,
Hmm.
you can do postural exercises and trigger pointing and various things, but um, at least starting with getting the deficiencies dialed in could be
Hmm.
very
Totally.
beneficial. So,
Totally.
yeah.
So what are you going to do rest of today? Anything fun?
We're finishing the goat enclosure, so we actually connected the shed to
Nice.
the outdoor little goat roaming area, which is fun. Because I think with keeping your own animals, the most important thing besides clean water and the best food is just having areas for them to jump and run around
Uh-huh.
in. And so there's actually a hillside with a lot of wild plants. They're getting who knows what minerals in there,
Yeah.
which is a big thing. They can transmute a lot of those minerals. They're getting pristine water, second cutting alfalfa,
Wow.
and the buck's so funny. I'll walk in there, the little male that I'm going to breed with the doe at some point, and he just jumps and headbutts and will do a fake kind of charge at me, and he just wants
Uh,
to play all the time.
that's
And
awesome.
yeah, it's just fun at the farm. Geese. We have 3 geese wandering around and 6 hens still waiting on on eggs. But
Dude.
that's something I've inspired a lot of people to start a homestead because
Mhm.
it's way easier than you think. I mean, you can
Mhm.
build or get a chicken coop and just get some chickens going, and now you don't have to go to buy eggs at the store. It's so much better.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what we're considering doing here soon too, is getting some chickens starting out that way. And, I think it's so important moving into the future, especially with all the craziness going on now. So, um, yeah, awesome. We'll have fun today, man. And yeah, I'll be in touch on Instagram and I'll send you a link to the show too.
Sounds great, Justin. It's always so much fun, and thank you again. The conversations like this light me up, and I love it. So,
That's awesome. All right, man. I will be in touch very soon. Thanks, dude.
all right, thanks, Justin.
Okay. Have a good one.
Too.
All right, guys. So there you go, Mr. Matt Blackburn. There you go. Let me take off his thing. Hope you guys enjoyed that show, dude. We went for 2 hours and 20 minutes. That was a long time, but I hope you got some good value out of that, and I hope you got some good information. And I like what he's doing, like I mentioned before, because he's really has a lot of integrity, and there's a lot of shysters, not just in the natural health world, but in the world in general. And when you run across a guy with a really good heart like that, who is willing to do what it takes to help people, because like I mentioned, his Mitolife before, which was selling DHA, was harming people. And so to be able to pivot and to move like that, I think is really important. And I think that it shows a lot of integrity on his part. So I hope you guys enjoyed that show. We do shows, brand new shows every Friday morning on YouTube here, Facebook as well. And we try to broadcast as long as they will allow us to have a show here on social media. We don't know how long that will be, judging by all the censorship going on in the world today. Every Friday morning at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. And so that's when our shows are. And Matt's been on the show. This is our third show we've done with him. The first two were in studio, where we actually had a studio. So now everything's going to be virtual. But yeah, so he's got a lot of cool information, and I would recommend checking out his products. If you're watching here on Facebook or YouTube, there should be links down below for his products, which I highly recommend and consume myself. The Shilajit, the vitamin E, the enzymes. I don't really do the gluten savior product because I don't really eat any gluten, but the dairy absorb I do, and all the other ones I do as well. And so I'm looking forward to his magnesium supplement, because making magnesium bicarbonate isn't, I don't know. There should be an easier way to consume it. And so really looking forward to his product coming out there. And like I mentioned before, that code is EHR15. So anytime you go and purchase some of Matt's products, just think about us and go to our store, biochargeme.com, and you click over, and we have his coupon code EHR15. And so that way it supports our work and it supports him, and you get an awesome product. So it's a win-win-win. And so I really like keeping up with him and following him on Instagram and these types of things. Before the show, we had a call with our Extreme Health Academy members, and so that was a lot of fun. Every Friday morning before our shows, I meet with our Academy members, and we go over different protocols and different things that we're all doing and sharing and inspiring one another live as a Zoom call with a group. So it's a lot of fun to do that. And if you're not an Academy member, I'd highly recommend checking out extremehealthacademy.com. And if you want a coupon code to that for a free 14-day trial, type in the code EHR14 for that, and look forward to that too. And one final thing to let you know about the Sauna sale, we have extended it by popular sort of demand. Had a lot of emails, people asking us to extend the Sauna sale. So sauna therapy is part of my protocol, and I do it probably about 3 or 4 times a week now. Sauna therapy is just incredible for helping to detoxify heavy metals, pathogens, poisons, all these types of things. Some people have said iron, but I haven't seen any research. We had one guest that said you can actually detox iron through sweat, but I haven't seen any actual research to that. And there's lots of saunas out there on biochargeme.com, which is our little store. We have different types of saunas. So we have the ozone saunas, we have the wooden saunas, but a lot of these things are like $4,000, $5,000. You got to knock out a wall, you got to build the whole thing. It's just a pain. The relax sauna is the one that I use and recommend the most. If you want one of those more fancy saunas, I would recommend that. But for like $1,200, the relax sauna uses far infrared heat. You don't have to preheat the thing, so it heats up immediately. It uses far infrared technology, and on the inside, the heat it's actually a light wave. And so what it does is it reflects off this reflective material on the inside all over your body, so you get an even distribution of these light waves. It's really a light therapy device, as I like to call it, and they're just awesome machines, and your head sticks out. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, it is just ideal for that, because in Ayurvedic medicine, you don't want your head to be heated too hot. It's not good. And so the reason why you sweat so much is because of all of the industrial chemicals. 60,000 new chemicals introduced into our environment since the early 60s. There's 84,000 chemicals in commerce right now. And inside your home, you're breathing chemicals, off-gassing from fire retardants in your bed and your carpets. The plastics are off-gassing, and we become the filter for these chemicals. And so this puts a tremendous burden on the liver. In order for the liver to carry out its 500 functions, it's being gummed up, much like Matt was saying with the lysosomes. Your liver cannot operate properly, and it can't carry out all those functions, creating bile and doing all these things that it needs to do, working with the gallbladder to create the bile, to create the stomach acid, and to be able to break down your food. And all of these things are dependent on the liver. And when we live in our modern world full of chemicals, these things get stored in our tissues and in our body. So that's just why, like, sauna therapy should be, I think, a part of all of our daily protocols. So super, super important, especially moving into a 5G world. Getting that light therapy is so key and so critical. So this is why I like the relax. It's you get all this amazing benefit for like half the cost of what you'd spend on one of those wooden ones. And in my opinion, if I had a wooden one and a far infrared, I'd use the far infrared from the relax, just because I sweat tremendously. And it's incredible. And there's all kinds of other protocols you can do with the sauna itself too. Like using some castor oil over your liver. You can take some other minerals, you can enhance and further increase the detoxification pathways of your body prior to getting in. And so what I like to do is I like to jump up and down on a rebounder that we have and then jump in the sauna as well. So we're running this sale for a couple more days. I think it's till Sunday. Sunday, that would be, let's see, today's the 24th of July, 2020. So that would be the 26th of July, 11:59 p.m. Pacific time is when the sale runs out. So if you were considering getting a sauna, which I highly recommend you do, there's a good sale going on, and it's Summer Flash, I believe, is the discount. So after 11:59 p.m. On the 26th of July, that will be gone. So just want to let you guys know about that. If you're in the market or you're considering buying one of these products to stay healthy, and especially moving into the fall season here in the Northern Hemisphere, super critical for that. Keeping a strong immune system, improving longevity, increasing circulation, all of these great, tremendous benefits. So the Relax Sauna sale is going to be going on for a couple more days. And so the coupon code is SummerFlash on biochargeme.com. So I just want to let you guys know about that. And just a quick plug for our next week's guest. So today was Matt Blackburn. Next Friday, we're going to have Dr. Andrew Kaufman. We'll be talking with him about Koch's postulates and this bizarre way they're testing for the exosomes really and the antibodies instead of for the coronavirus. So we'll talk to him about that. Then on Friday, we got Stephen Baker. The next Friday after that, Project 180 and vaccines. Really recommend you listen to that show. And Mary Toko will be doing another show about vaccines, and she's going to talk about the sheriff's plan and what your local county sheriff can do to protect you. And then Chris Wark from Chris Beat Cancer, we'll be talking with him on the 21st of August. So lots of cool guests coming up. Make sure to subscribe if you have not done so already so you don't miss any of these shows. And also, if you want to sign up to our newsletter list, which I recommend you do, we send out newsletters on Mondays and Thursdays. Sometimes I may send one on Friday if we have a live show. I don't want to bombard you, so sometimes I don't send the Friday one, but just Mondays and Thursdays, and you'll keep up to date with all of our past shows and upcoming shows as well. And then one other final thing too, if you're listening on like a podcast player like Stitcher or iTunes or Spotify or anything like that, we broadcast every single day. So 6 days a week, our shows are the best of episodes. And then Sunday night is the newest episode on the podcast. So this episode today, Friday, will be available Sunday nights if you're subscribed on iTunes. So make sure to subscribe. And then you get 7 shows a week. Every day there's a show, just kind of recycled from all of our best of episodes of the past 8 years. So stay tuned for that and make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening today. I hope you guys enjoyed Matt Blackburn. And if you're into his work, you'll probably know about us because we're into his work as well. And so make sure to subscribe to our podcast. And we're kind of taking things down the same sort of direction that Matt is with calcification, lipofuscin, biohacking, these types of things that I think that are really critical for today. So love you guys. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Send me an email, Justin at Extreme Health Radio. And make sure to check out the sauna or any of Matt's products if you want to support his work and our work as well. And I think that's about it. Love you guys, and I'll see you next Friday with Dr. Andrew Kaufman for episode. Oh, by the way, this is episode 664. So I'll put links to this at extremehealthradio.com/664. All right, love you guys. See you next Friday.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or